All right, well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining our September Provider Supports Subcommittee meeting. My name is Dave Mayer, and I'm one of the co-chairs of this committee, and just really I'm happy for you to be able to join us today. And thank you for taking the time to be at this meeting and to contribute your thoughts. And we have a great group of presenters today, so excited to get into the topics after a couple of opening slides. So let's go to that first one. All right, so one of the keys today is we have a couple of great interpreters with us. So in order to get the right interpretation for the meeting today, please follow the steps that are on your screen. You're going to start by clicking the interpretation globe icon at the bottom of the screen. And then after that, click the language that you want to hear. This is going to be the first of a couple of reminders for both the co-chairs and for the presenters to speak at a good, not too fast cadence in order for our interpreters to be able to have a successful day with us. They'll let us know if we start to move too fast. So we will, give you a heads up if we're hearing that. But just try to remember that as we're moving through the topics today. So again, please click on the interpretation globe icon at the bottom of the screen, and then click the language you want to hear. Let's go to the next one. So today, we do have a presenter that's going to start right at 9:15. And so we're going to do our introductions today in the chat rather than unmuting. So today in the chat, if you could share your name, where you're located, or what your business is that you work for, your role, and then also answer this question. September marks the start of fall. What's one thing that you are most looking forward to this season? So in the chat, take about a minute to put in that so you can introduce yourself to the rest of the group. I'm going to take time to do that as well. All right, so feel free to put those questions in the chat or those answers in the chat. All right, we see a few coming through now. So feel free to read through those as we kind of move through our first few slides today, just so you can get familiar with the other people that are in our virtual room with us this morning. And again, thank you everyone for joining this morning. Awesome. All right, Jessica, the fantasy team is already failing. I like that. I'm in the same boat right now, Jamie. All right, so we're going to start by doing the review of the meeting materials. So we're going to take a couple of minutes. I know that these both got sent out with the agenda, but we always like to take a minute or two to be able to read through them for those that didn't get a chance yet um, to do that. And so the first one, and Jessica just put it in the chat right now, is I think this is the meeting minutes from our July meeting. So you should be able to click on that link and they will pop up for you. Let's take about 1 to 1.5 minutes just to be able to read through those. And then I'll come back and see if anyone has any questions on the items that were in the minutes from last meeting.
Yeah, we're off to 3 days with 74 principals. Good enough. And it's great. It's always a good event. All right, thanks, Caitlin. Take care.
Please remember to mute yourself if you're not the speaker.
All right, about 30 more seconds. All right. Does anybody have any questions from the meeting minutes from our July meeting? You can either raise your hand or come off mute. I think one question that I had was, has there been a confirmation from UW, Cultivate Learning, on the turnaround time for education applications from Merit? I don't know if anybody here can answer that question.
Hello,
Hey,
this is
Gretchen.
Gretchen, and I'm getting used to my son's camera setup, so forgive me. I'm having to learn how to look up. We have two sets of backlogs, and it's about 90-day response time for those received prior to right now. For right now, if we received your application as of today, it would be about 45. Is
Okay.
that helpful?
It is, thank you. I think the
Okay.
area that we're finding some difficulty with that is in situations in which there is a transfer of leadership. So the new
Okay.
primary contact or the new director in a site can't be transferred until those credits are approved. So if there's
Oh,
a quicker pathway to make things like that occur, that might be something to look at while working through the backlog.
okay. Thank you for
Yep.
clarification.
All right. Any other questions for the minutes from last time? All right, Jessica, let's go to the next one. Did we lose our... Oh, there we go. All right, in the chat now, you should be able to click on the feedback loop. And so let's take another minute to read through the items that are on the feedback loop. Does anybody have any questions on items that were in the feedback loop? Feel free to either unmute or to raise your hand. All right. Was there one more, Jessica? I can't remember. Oh, sorry, Sandra. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't see your hand right away.
That's okay. They keep moving this stuff. Good, good morning, everyone. Just to piggyback off of pace, is there uh, uh, a guideline or a time frame for getting through pace? I've had one staff participate for 3 years, and we still don't have anything from them on any credentials that he's actually earned yet. So it'd be nice to just have a timeline on where they're supposed to be and what they earned after so many sessions.
I mean, since that's our next topic, I think Gretchen can handle that one fairly soon. That's a good question, Sandra.
All right, thank you for putting that out there, Sandra, and we'll have that talked about here in our upcoming section. All right, and then any other questions on that one? All right, our last link to look at today, before we get into our topics, is the agency updates. Jessica just put a link to the agency updates in the chat. So let's take 1 minute on agency updates and then take any questions.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in if that's okay.
Please do.
I will be doing the survey. I recently, actually just this Monday, had to renew my insurance, and the application is different than what I've experienced before. It's very lengthy and it's pretty invasive. Um, and they requested copies of my most recent licensing monitoring visit, which I haven't had to turn in before. But this is where, if they're not understanding what they're reading, if they're not understanding that one violation um, was written up under 4 different areas, it could be problematic. Fortunately, I didn't have any, but this is where that multiple listing things multiple times really comes into play, since insurance companies aren't going to read it and realize that was one violation written down to address 4 different whacks. So if you guys have, I hope you'll use the link and share your experience, the link that's in the agency update.
Thank you, Julie. Are there any other questions on the agency updates? Thank you,
I just,
Julie, for putting the
yeah.
link to the insurance survey in the chat. So if you didn't have the opportunity to see that in the agency update, it is now in the chat for you to do as well. All right. Well,
Um,
oh, sorry.
Dave, I was just gonna respond to Julie for a second, and there's a lot of other stuff I would say going on, but I just wanted to like definitely do the survey like Julie suggested. But I have been hearing a ton of conversations recently around trying to stop what you're talking about, Julie. This dinging people multiple times when really it should just be one whack. It should just be one thing that we're like, hey, let's clean this up and let's not find these different angles around it to do it. And there is some meaningful work going on around that, and there'll be some communication coming out. So I just wanted to say that.
I appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, Brett, that's awesome. Thank you for bringing that to the group this morning. Any other comments on either the minutes, the feedback loop, or the agency updates? All right, well, thank you all. And please remember to continue to put thoughts that you have today in the chat, even if it's off the topic that we're working on. It's nice to be able to capture things as they come up and as you think about things. And so even though they might not be answered immediately, know that they're being put in there and that you'll see them in the feedback loops and agency updates as they as those continue to happen. All right. So for our first topic today, we are happy to have both Brett and Gretchen with us to talk about the staff qualifications updates. Um, they're going to provide an update on the staff qualifications work per the House Bill 1648. And just a reminder again, to be able to make sure that we have successful interpretation today, uh, speaking at a good cadence, not too fast of a cadence, and we will hopefully have a good experience for everyone that's joined our meeting today. All right, so Gretchen and Brett, we'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Dave. Really appreciate it. And forgive me with the eye contact. I really am struggling with this camera situation. My name is Gretchen Starr Brunig, and I am the Workforce Supports Manager in the Early Learning Division. I'll let Brett introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Brett Skinner, and I'm the Child Care Policy Program Manager. And just really happy that we're going to have this two-way communication today.
Next slide, please. We are really pleased to have your invitation to come and meet with you monthly. We wanted to let you know what the format of these presentations would be like, so you know what to expect. So we will always be able to share with you the status of the work plan and timeline, including any updates for changes to that. And then also be able to tell you a little bit about what the work group has been up to, what their discussions have been, the themes of those discussions, and the recommendations. We will have this on a monthly feedback loop, similar to other work groups that you may have experienced, like the Access to Living Wage group and other groups. And then we will always ask for your feedback because we are relying on you to help us shape these recommendations. Our leadership team, the executive steering committee, has requested that we bring everything back to them for their review so that they can see the recommendations and the feedback from provider supports, ELAC, and the Indian Policy for Early Learning. We would like to devote as much time as we can in these presentations to the feedback. Okay, next slide, please. Going to rely on you, Dave, if there are questions, if the hands raised, thank you. I appreciate it. All right. So we will always, have a little topics for today's slide as well. And so we're going to be talking about our work plan status with the real focus this month of lifting up and out the work group. And then Brett will be sharing a little bit about kickoff meeting plans and feedback loops. So that's what today is. Next slide, please. So we think that this slide is an important reminder for those who may be attending provider supports for the first time. So these updates are related to a recent law, which took effect late July, which does two things. First, it extends the timeline for staff qualifications. Providers have an extra 5 years to complete staff qualifications. And in addition, it establishes it extends the experiential equivalency to include center directors, center assistant directors, and program supervisors who have a cumulative of 5 years of experience by August 1st of 2030. And also, there are other requirements related to health and safety and current employment that go with that. The second big element of the bill is lifting up and out a staff qualifications work group, and we're going to spend the remainder of the presentation discussing that. The DCYF is required to report to the legislature by December 1st of 2026.
Gretchen,
All
can I
right.
just stop for a second just to
Yes.
reframe what you said? So a staff person would meet their education job role if they are in their position for 5 years by 8/1/2030.
Cumulative of 5 years.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, that's
Great.
correct.
Thank you.
My pleasure. All right, next slide, please. So as I promised, here is a timeline. We have completed the selection and the work group members have accepted participation in the work group. The first meeting will take place September 29th. And we will be looking through experience-based competency rules and policies this fall. And then, as noted, we will continue to come to you monthly, and we'll be sharing these updates until August, end of August. You will have opportunities to review the outline and draft reports, in addition to the monthly synthesis of recommendations and feedback. Okay, next slide, please. So as I noted, we have a draft work plan, which we will be running by the work group and finalizing. And then from that final work plan, we would establish each meeting's deep dive topic. So in this first meeting, it is an opportunity to get to know each other and to take a look at the work plan, the group norms, the frequency of meetings, and introduction to the topics. And then we will also establish our procedures, our working procedures to make recommendations and engage in the feedback loops. Next slide. And I'm passing it to Brett.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the work group, kind of membership, the acceptance, kind of the process that we went through, and how individuals were selected. So, the all work group members have been accepted into the process, and the bill itself had sort of like 10 organizations that were sort of listed within the bill. And we'll kind of talk about who that is. And then we also needed to find 10 individuals that were basically as a volunteer basis, but also met the diverse parameters of what were going on within the bill. So we had 55 people respond to the survey and express interest. And so there's, basically what we're attempting to do is include a diverse license types, including tribal license capacities, different regions, different types of programming, languages spoken. We were able to include 2 Spanish speaking and 1 Somali speaking provider, subsidy status, early achiever status, um, and then obviously we're going to look at the overlap or the intersection of the different committees, people that are represented on different committees, where we're trying to find the right balance of making sure that we get some different voices, knowing that we still are going to be coming to these groups Gretchen mentioned to this meeting, to IPEL, to continue to have it be a space where we can get more feedback, we can get more vetting, more perspective on where we're going with this all together. Um, so it wasn't easy. We got a lot of we got a lot of feedback from different meetings, from different people emailing, people wanting to get into it. And so it definitely was a lot of hard conversations. There was a lot of like trying to map things out. There was a lot of how do we make sure that we aren't pushing people out that are vital to this conversation, while also hitting what the bill is asking and making sure that we're also getting some different voices in there as well. So, really appreciate everybody's feedback, everybody who's volunteered, everybody who's spoken up and given feedback on the process. So, like this kind of says, we do have those members all accepted. So we can go on to the next slide. So this is basically what the bill sort of describes in terms of the work group organizations that we get on here. And so you can see that there's quite a different, lots of different representation as we go through these. And so you can kind of see uh, um, it's a bit of a juggling act in terms of getting it, but we're going to have a lot of awesome perspective in the work group to go through these. So I want to just take a second for people to kind of read through these, and this is 6. There's 4 more. Um, one of the things that's a little bit on the downside is DCYF applied to receive the lived experience stipends, but that application was denied. So we had kind of talked about that, but unfortunately we weren't able to get that. I mean, obviously budgets are pretty tight right now, but unfortunately that did not come through. Could we go to the next slide? There's 4 more that I want to make sure that we read through. So, um, statewide out of school time intermediary organization that represents the interests of refugee and immigrant communities, a bilingual childcare provider whose first language is not English, an organization that advocates for early learning, an organization representing private independent schools, the State Board of Community and Technical Colleges. I would just wanted to make sure that we got to see the whole perspective of that. If you want to go to the next slide. Um, so I kind of touched on this, but this was this was basically the selection of the providers and the amount of work that went into trying to make sure that we had a balanced approach to this. Um, we feel like we were able to kind of do that. I worked in I worked in change management for multiple years, and one of the hardest things is managing expectations and trying to find a solution that's going to work for everybody. And I always continue to recognize that it's never going to be a perfect solution for everybody. And so I always want to recognize that there is always going to be disappointment and that it doesn't fit everybody perfectly. But we did put in a lot of effort. There were a lot of conversations about the feedback that we heard to try to get this right, to try to make sure that we were doing the best that we could. And so just wanted to report that out. We did feel like we found some balance, and also no more than one representative from an organizational affiliation such as YMCA or KinderCare, just to try to make sure that there's equitable sort of power in the room with having voices, so we weren't sort of overpowered by just one group. Because we're gonna have like a family home provider that it might just be them that's participating. So we can go to the next slide. This slide is a maybe more easy to read because it's kind of colorful, but it's showing you the representation by region and program. You might something that might stand out is that you see King and Pierce County has 4, and a part of that is just because it aligns with the population trends in the state of Washington, and there's a high density of population. in King and Pierce County. Um, but this does give you an opportunity to see how some of these things have been balanced out. Um, and then also making sure that we have tribal representation with our certified program and certified for payment only, so that those perspectives are not lost as we work through this. And one of the tribal centers also has a Montessori curriculum, so even more balance there. Can we go to the next slide? And Gretchen will take back over.
Yeah, I wanted to share this, the letter that we have drafted out to tribal directors, offering other strategies for their involvement. And so we sent this letter on September 3rd. We sent it out to early learning center directors, tribal family childcare, the Tribal Child Care and Development Fund administrators, and tribal teachers. And this is just an example of extended outreach, and we would love to be able to do this for provider supports as well. We anticipate that we will be sending follow-up surveys to you after our presentations to get additional input from the whole distribution list. For those not able to attend, they still will have opportunities to provide feedback. And we offered several different things to the tribal directors, including one-to-one 30-minute conversations. If there are other ways that really work best for your provider community, we would love to be able to do that. So next slide, please. So as we noted, we are preparing, feels like a wedding or some other really significant event that we've been working toward. The first meeting will be on September 29th from 9 to 11. The invitation is forthcoming, I believe, today. And the whole purpose of the meeting is to begin to build relationships, to allow opportunities for our co-sponsors to warmly welcome you, to be able to set the landscape, and then dive into some of the logistics and operating procedures. Because by October, as we will be meeting on a monthly basis, we will automatically go into the deep dive of the conversations and begin to start making reservations. I'm sorry, recommendations, not reservations. So at our next meeting, we will be able to share with you the guiding questions and the meeting topics, the fall meeting topics, and kind of, what to expect in the coming months for the work group's work. So this fall, as I noted earlier, we will be focused on experiential equivalency, streamlining qualifications, and related rules. In the winter, we will be focusing in on PACE. And Sandra, I really appreciate your question about the timeline on completion of PACE, and I will need to check back with my colleagues to give the full response in the feedback loop. So I hope to have that response to you submitted by this week, and then we can get back to you on that. But thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. And then in the spring, we will be covering the remaining topics required by the bill, in making sure that we have covered everything that's in the bill. And so we will give you more information on all of this next month. So stay tuned. Related topic, I did want to share that we were asked about scholarships, and we are so pleased to report that there is funding for the Early Achievers grants, awarding new scholarships for initial, short, and state certificates. So if you have staff members, please encourage them to apply. In addition, for the staff members and family childcare providers who are earning a bachelor's degree and receiving a scholarship from Childcare Aware of Washington, we are able to honor the existing scholarships for bachelor's degrees. Childcare Aware will also honor new and existing scholarships for Montessori. However, we did not have adequate funding to offer new bachelor scholarships through Childcare Aware of Washington at this time. Okay, now we're moving on to the feedback loops. And this is just a visual representation of what we've already shared. That the work group will meet, and then we will come to all three of these advisory meetings. From the advisory meetings, my team will be responsible for creating a summary form, and we will be sharing that summary form back with the DCYF Executive Steering Committee. The Executive Steering Committee includes our co-sponsors, Nicole Rose from the Early Learning Division, Ruben Reeves from the Licensing Division, along with Tiff and Travis. It also includes the Office of Tribal Relations and Governmental Affairs, and they will be meeting on a monthly basis. The leadership team will review the recommendations and all the feedback in light of the DCYF operating principles and the Access to Living Wage Plan and DCYF's strategic and equity plan. And then the process will start the second feedback loop, which is on the next slide. So once we have shared back the summary form with everyone's opinions with the work group, they can refine it and we'll come back again. And then we will have 2 stages of this feedback summarized in the form to DCYF leadership, the Executive Steering Committee. And then they will make the final recommendations that will go into the report by December 1st, 2026. So you will be receiving these monthly updates and offered opportunities for feedback through August of 2026. And then after that, DCYF requires a few months for all of the internal processing for a legislative report. Okay, that was a lot of information. Next slide, please.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
If you get a piece of feedback from this group about a certain piece, would your inclination then be to bring that suggestion back to the work group? Or
Correct.
do you have the ability just to be able to make a change that makes sense from a group of 30 people here that might not be on the work group, rather than getting, I guess, a vote from the work group whether or not that suggestion should be implemented? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And because we are putting all of the feedback and the recommendations on the same summary form, they both stand. So yes,
Okay.
we will share it back with the work group. They may choose to vote and adopt the recommendation right away. Or they don't, and then the feedback goes to the Executive Steering Committee.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, yes. All right, so I'm going to pass this back to Brett here.
So sorry, I was drafting a response to Dee's question. Uh, um, basically, this is a one of the things that's really, really hard, I feel like with all of the work is figuring out ways to have two-way conversations. Because you're towing the line between like how, trying to get people enough of the information, but also being able to get these things. So we do want to continue to request different feedback or suggestions that you have. Um, and So if there's thoughts that you have or you want to just bring this up or talk about them right now, we would appreciate hearing this.
So feel free to raise your hand or more than happy for you to just come off mute as well. Gloria?
Buenos días. Bueno, más que pregunta, es a una observación que yo he hecho sé que lo voy a presentar en el grupo de trabajo, pero también sé que va a venir acá con ustedes. He observado que cuando uno traduce la página de Mérida en español en educación, cuando se va a reportar la educación, ahí viene en español la palabra secundaria. Eso confunde a muchos proveedores que tienen secundaria de su país de origen. Cuando lo someten en Merry, resulta que es rechazado porque no lo equivalen. Entonces, si no están recibiendo los certificados de secundaria, deberían de cambiar el vocabulario a otra palabra, por decir. Lo que he observado, que aceptan el de preparatoria de otros países. Entonces eso lo equivalen ustedes acá a secundaria, perdón, a high school. Entonces si se pudiera modificar ese vocabulario que sale ahí, porque eso confunde a muchos proveedores. Y por eso a veces son rechazados porque no se los califican a high school o asistentes de maestros que quieren iniciar en el aprendizaje temprano. La mayoría tienen certificado de secundaria de sus países de origen. Entonces, en este país no lo consideran high school, que debería, ¿verdad? Porque yo estudié en México y yo sé el grado de educación que nos dan allá al que es acá y es un poquito más alto. Veo estudiantes de high school aquí a estudiantes de secundaria allá y es igual o un poquito más. Entonces es ahí la confusión de muchísimas personas que aplican en aprendizaje temprano y cuando son rechazados, eso pues los bloquea y ya no continúan. Entonces traigo muchas yo sugerencias con relación a esto, pero nada más por el momento quería hacer esa observación del lenguaje que se está usando cuando la página se traduce en español. No sé si sí me expliqué. ¿Entendieron mi mensaje?
Thank you, Gloria.
Yeah, Gloria, that made perfect sense to me. Um, and I know Gretchen and others, this is in their wheelhouse. Do you have any suggestions on ways that we could improve that?
Bueno, quisiera contestar y luego con la compañera. Yo en lo personal diría que se les diera la oportunidad a las personas que están presentando su certificado de secundaria, que se les aceptara, pero que se les pusiera como un plan de estudio a corto tiempo conseguir ya sea el proceso de Equal año uno, año 2, año 3 y el PACE, perdón, año 2 y PACE, o si tienen la oportunidad de tener acceso al colegio para sacar su certificado inicial, sería perfecto porque entonces más personas vendrían a la industria de aprendizaje temprano y no tendrían que esperar tanto tiempo en sacar un GD o en andar buscando escuelas donde pueden hacer sus high school diploma, que en muchas ocasiones a veces los toman en otros estados y a veces acá el DCYF no los vale porque ya yo he tenido participantes quieren sacar su licencia y toman su high school en otro estado en línea y no es válido acá. Entonces también nosotros tener una lista de escuelas que les dé la facilidad a los estudiantes acá en el estado de Washington que puedan tener su high school diploma, si es que se requiere, que yo sinceramente lo digo con secundaria, y tomar entrenamientos de aprendizaje temprano es más productivo que hacerlos a fuerza que tengan que esperar un año o 6 meses, 8 meses para sacar un high school diploma. Por eso mucha gente se desanima y se va a trabajar a otro lado.
Yeah, that's great. And I was almost thinking that from what you said, it makes me concerned with the language that's in the WAC or in our materials around saying the words high school, and that maybe if we could use the word middle school, that could potentially be helpful to make people feel included. And we could put some other language around it. But I think that you bring up some really interesting points. Gretchen, do you have other things to say?
I just am so grateful that you brought this up for everyone to hear today, Gloria. It's exactly the type of question that we're going to dig into. And I will be reading the transcript so that we can inform the guiding questions that the work group does. Thank you again.
Jacqueline, please go ahead with your question or comment.
Sí, buenos días a todos. Ah, yo sí estoy muy de acuerdo en que las personas interesadas en abrir un home daycare tengan su GED o tengan preparatoria. ¿Por qué? Porque yo también estudié en México y la secundaria, a mi forma de pensar, sí me parece que está más elevada la secundaria que aquí el aprendizaje que tiene, pero yo sí estoy de la manera de que los niños necesitan maestras o proveedoras con un alto o un buen aprendizaje. ¿Por qué? Porque somos como las primeras maestras, aparte de sus mamás, que nosotros les introducimos el aprendizaje. Entonces, sí, para mí sí es importante que tengamos un andamiaje firme para estar preparadas para estar trabajando con esos niños. Sí pienso que se debe de dar, que se tiene que hacer, tener más oportunidades para ya tomar su GD o poder poder aprender más, o sea, que se pueda dar como dice la maestra Gloria, el PACE, y otras clases que puedan llegar a un punto que puedan tener un buen estudio para poder hacer el trabajo, ya que yo me doy cuenta que los niños sí necesitan mucho de que uno los enseñe para cuando lleguen al kinder ellos puedan sentirse confiados en que el aprendizaje que obtuvieron en nuestros cuidados es una base muy bien formada para empezar la escuela. Es mi punto de vista y sí, yo sí que se pueda, am, que pueda haber más oportunidad para el estudio en español, ya que a veces porque su primer idioma es el español y las clases en los colegios están con más oportunidad de poderlas recibir en inglés, pues muchas se limitan a no tomarlas porque la limitación que tienen es el idioma. Es lo que yo pienso y es lo que a mí me gustaría más que nada para el futuro, que son los niños, entonces que nosotras seamos unas maestras que estemos bien preparadas. Gracias.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you.
There was also one other note in the chat from Janelle that talked about using more dollars and ability to be able to use the sub pool to attend advisory meetings. Just to be able to make that just a little bit easier on directors and others to participate and getting that support while they're not able to be in their classrooms.
Janelle, thank you so much for bringing this forward. It's very timely as we have our contractor meeting with Imagine this week, and I will raise this. Thank you.
Some good comments so far. Anyone else have, as you look at the screen here, anything for Gretchen or Brett on what guidance you would have on the feedback loops?
Dave,
Let's see.
I'll jump in and offer the purpose of the subpool is really to support the professional development of the workforce. And so while I appreciate the challenge that meetings during the work day present to especially our family childcare providers, we really have sort of this scope dedicated to professional development.
And thank you for jumping in, Tiff. Feel free to raise your hand or come off mute if anyone else has any other comments for what Gretchen and Brett are asking for at this moment. Sandra, go ahead.
I would also like to include our other foreign staff from Africa, from Bahamas, things like that. They're not really given a lot of support and getting their documentation approved in the United States, so it really becomes a hassle for them.
Thanks,
Good
Sandra.
point. Thank you.
Anyone else have a comment or a question? Janelle?
Hey, I'm just following up on that subpool thing because
Yeah, hopefully I did an okay job
you
relating
did,
that.
you did perfect. Yeah, we're making Play-Doh here in the background, so it's kind of wild. Anyway, just to Tiffany's comment on that subpool thing, I don't feel like that information is actually communicated to providers because I just jumped on the subpool website when she said that. And I want to read to you the choices. I'm trying to zoom in here. The reason for your request for a subpool person to fill in is to cover staff leave and maintain ratio, licensee vacation, licensee sick leave, professional learning on-site, professional learning off-site, participation in off-site work activity, community-based or other. So I don't feel like it's communicated that it should be for professional learning because that's only 2 of those choices. So is that new guidance?
Janelle, you're absolutely right. That does not make it clear. And I was not inclusive of the absences for being sick. I think you're right about that. I think that clear communication is really key here. And so you raising this issue in this space is really valuable. I really appreciate it. I'll make sure that we are making it, we make the intent clear.
Okay. And I assume that there's probably a lot of subpool hours that go unused at the end of the year. So since you're having your meeting with them soon, this might be a good question. What happens to that money? Is that rolled over into something else? Is it refunded to the state? I have no idea what they do with that, but I would love to know, because at the end of a fiscal year, if there's sub-pool tagged hours that haven't been used, maybe this is one of those places we could use those hours and it would still be sub-pool, but kind of a different group. Anyway, I have a lot of questions about Imagine Institute and would love to talk about that as well. But that's my 2 cents on the sub-pool part. Thank you.
I just want to reiterate my gratitude for you raising these questions and wonderings. I always appreciate the brilliance of our workforce in being problem solvers. And I'd love to connect with you separately, so I'll reach out separately. Thank you, Janelle.
Julie, I do see you have your hand up, but I think Nicole, I saw her hand raised during this one, so I don't know if that was a follow-up to Tiff's.
No, I want to, I will defer to Julie and then I'll circle back on some of the fiscal and financial questions.
Okay, perfect. All
Oh
right,
no,
Julie, give it a go.
I'm jumping way back, so you might as well go.
Oh, okay.
I tried to time it.
So I just want to clarify, Janelle, and again, thank you for raising these pieces. That, you know, anytime there are not funds, whether it is subpool or other funds that are unspent, those do go back to the state. I think what we can do is, you know, commit to following up in the feedback loop around some of your questions, but just wanted to note that if there are unused state dollars, which doesn't happen too often, that those are reverted back to the state.
Thanks, Nicole. Julie?
Okay, thanks. So, since I think the presentation's done, I'm kind of like I'm still thinking about something that was presented earlier in this presentation about I think it was an experience waiver for program soups, directors and whatnot. Can you talk and expand a little more about what that would mean and I think I may have gotten it confused.
I apologize. That was my cursor lost. Thank you for asking. So we have not yet gotten all of this put into merit, but that is the plan, that we will have easier capacity to be able to document your experience in merit. But what the law provides is that center directors, assistant directors, and program supervisors have the option now to demonstrate staff qualifications using their experience. And it can be calculated in one of two ways. It can be a consecutive experience of, you know, since 2021, or it can be cumulative, meaning you could have stopped out of the workforce and then restarted, of 5 years by 2030. So the end result is that for those leadership roles that are required to have a state certificate, if they are employed by August 1st of 2025 and stay employed until August 1st of 2030. Thank you, Nicole. Really appreciate it. Experience is an option to demonstrate your education, your job role education. So does that help, Julie?
I mean, my jaw's kind of on the floor, figuratively. I mean, that's wonderful.
Why, and maybe I just missed this, to expand on Julie's, why are lead teachers, assistant teachers not included in that same? Isn't it
No.
everybody? I don't think
It
it's
is
just
everybody. It is
Okay,
everybody.
yeah.
But the effect of the bill is to widen the circle of those
Got
who
it,
are
okay.
eligible. Okay.
Got it.
It was
Okay, I
always
just wanted to make sure that that was clear, that it wasn't just for the group.
No, it was always limited to teachers and assistant teachers before, and program soups and directors had to still get the education. There was no experience waiver. So this is huge.
It is.
And the change from being consecutive to cumulative is also huge. So thank you for explaining all that again, because I thought I couldn't have, what I thought I heard couldn't be right, but it was right. Wow.
And just quick, is that like effective right now?
It is effective right now, but you would need to go ahead, Nicole. I saw you.
No, go ahead, Gretchen, you got it.
So when you meet with your licensor, you would need to be able to demonstrate those 5 years of experience in your monitoring visit, but soon, in the next few months, we will be able to do that through merit. So I'm not exactly sure how long it's going to take to get that change made in merit, so I'm not making any huge promises, but that is the plan. Does that answer your question, Janelle?
It does, and it sounds like I'm going to invite my licensor for a monitoring visit like next week.
I think the question that I have as I'm listening to this is what additional communication would be helpful about this bill and sort of where we're at in the process. And because we've come here and shared information. There's been some information that has gone out. So I would just be curious from this group of what would be helpful to you all around communicating sort of what the bill has done so that you can share that information, I think, in your centers, licensed family homes, etc.
I think for me, having so many different sites, the challenge that I run into often is finding the person that would qualify as the director. And so right now when I go to the WAC, there's that beautiful little grid that says if you are at a center that has, I can't remember the numbers, but 25 plus kids, you have to have 45 credits or more. Between this and this, it's this many credits or more. So that's still being there and seeming relevant actually in the WACs, I think can be confusing with this change, because I think what I'm hearing is that someone can be a center director, the primary contact, the licensee, use whatever word that it's been used in the past, that person, as long as they have worked for 5 years, no longer has to have that number of credits. So someone that's worked at a site for 30 years and has never qualified to be the actual licensee because they didn't have those college credits could now move into that position. Whereas before, we were always trying to be innovative about who can play that role, even though that 30-person year couldn't do it because someone else actually had the education to qualify in that position. That changes a lot if that's truly what we're saying. And right now, that grid is still in there. And so I think that we would have to communicate that that grid no longer applies as long as it's still sitting in the WACs. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think what I'm hearing is what can we communicate about what has changed now? And then what will happen in the work group, what that will look like in the future. And so I know Gretchen and Brett and Tiff and team are have a group that comes together on an almost daily basis to talk about all these things. So I think we can take all of this information back and think about what is the best way to communicate some of what's happening, even though our WACs and some of those things aren't going to be caught up per se with
Yeah.
some of the changes.
Julie?
Yeah, I think it'd be really helpful to have, I know that the professional development people within DCYF have done a lot of webinars. They've been really good webinars, but they have not been well attended at all. But it'd be really great if they would do one now, explain this huge difference between cumulative and consecutive, and that a director no longer has to have that education, and then put it out everywhere. Put the recording out on Facebook and put a link in newsletters. I'm an example of that. I'm somebody that I was a family home provider for like 3 years. I opened my center in 2001. So I've been running my center since July of 2001. I never finished my degree. So I've always had a program supervisor, which is wonderful. She's great. She's my number one person. But if she were to quit, if she were to move on, she's been with me for like 17 years, I would be frantic to hire somebody with that degree because I don't qualify. because I didn't make the choice to go back to school and finish the credits. So I appreciate the change, and I really think that a webinar that is shared everywhere would be really great.
Dee, thank you for your comment in the chat as well. For those that maybe can't see their chat right now, she has said, I hope there is consideration for people who have gained 5 or more years of experience, but also have grown into other positions like a teacher who becomes a program supervisor as those years went by. But I think that what we're hearing is that is true, unless I'm misinterpreting what Dee is saying.
So Dave,
So go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that what I would like to do is just have all these questions keep coming in, and we'll take them in and then go back and, like, I think come up with some sort of communication. And the reason I'm saying that, and Gretchen may have been going down this path as well, is that previously it was about the role, the highest role that you were in, and it
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily, I think I would say, transferable, like Dee is talking about here. And so I think there's just some clarifications that we want to make sure that we go back and do.
Cool, thank you. Brett, you found the grid. Thank you.
If anyone wanted to look at it.
Thanks, Nicole. All right, any last comments, or Brett or Gretchen, is there anything that you would like from this group to kind of wrap up our first section today?
I'm just delighted to have so many people willing to speak up and to write in the chat. And as Nicole indicated, it's just going to help us shape the questions and the work of the work group that much more. So thank you again.
And I just wanted to see, Dee, I answered your question. Were you able to look at that? Does that make sense what I wrote?
I know that she sometimes listens and is also hanging out with kiddos at the same time, so that might be where she's at the moment as well.
Okay. Well, I gave a response in terms of the anniversary date, and your anniversary date mainly will stay the same. There could be some circumstances if you did like a move, or you had like some sort of situation, it potentially could change if you were like doing sort of like a reapplication. But mainly your anniversary date will stay the same, and you'll do your attestation, you'll say that you have your background checks, you'll pay any of your licensing fees. So that always stays the same. And then your monitoring inspection, those are DCF's required to get those done by June 30th. And so if you basically, they all have to be done by June 30th, and then the new fiscal year starts. But your unannounced visit could happen before your anniversary date or after. It doesn't sort of reset anything, so it could kind of happen anytime during that fiscal year. So I was just trying to make that clear, that there's not like a resetting of your anniversary date.
Thanks, Brett. All right, any other questions or comments? So Brett and Gretchen, thank you so much for spending your time with us this morning. And we do have the Menti up for this section. And so please feel free to click on the link that Jessica put in the chat and provide any feedback on this topic for our presenters. Please include any other questions, any other comments for them to be able to bring back as they start this great work with the group at the end of September. And we will really are looking forward to having both Gretchen and Brett back with us every meeting to continue this conversation and to keep all these things moving forward. So Brett and Gretchen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you again.
All right, so let's take 1 minute to be able to put in your comments. Please feel free to click on that link for Jessica, and then we'll get Diana ready to go for the next section of the day. So let's just take 1 minute for everyone to click on that link and to provide any comments, additional questions, or other feedback from Gretchen and Brett's presentation. Thank you to everyone else who provided helpful answers, both in the chat and their conversation by unmuting and sharing. So. Thank you all for providing this, and this link stays open here right now too. So as we get going on Diana's presentation, please feel free to continue to put your comments and questions in to this mentee. All right, we are excited to have Diana Stokes with us today as our next presenter. She's the Early Care and Education Access Project Manager, and she will provide an update on the Early Care and Education Access and Living Wage Plan, including the recommendations and implementation strategies identified, as well as an update on the ECE facilities exploration project. So Diana, thank you so much for being with us today and bringing us this presentation.
Thanks, Dave, for having me. It's good to see everyone again today. As Dave mentioned, we're going to cover this implementation plan and where we're at today. For those that may be newer to this work, I just want to ground ourselves in what early learning is here in Washington State as we work toward an integrated mixed delivery system of affordable, high quality early care and education for all of Washington's children. And as Gretchen mentioned with her work, we continue to support various strategic outcomes for DCYF's strategic plan. On this next slide, really want to highlight just the key parts of the early care and education access and living wage provisos pillars as we think of them. We are working towards how do we increase access to high quality and affordable meaning a sustainable amount for childcare where families are paying no more than 7% of their household income, as well as uplifting our workforce with living wages and benefits. And through this work, it's really building on the Fair Start for Kids Act. This next slide highlights the timeline of where we've been with this work. It's not new. This was just legislation that continued to push this work forward. And right now we're at the end of this timeline, but that does not mean that the work is ending. So we are getting ready to submit this implementation plan to the legislature and to start rolling into implementation. But before I share what's fully in the plan, on the next slide, I want to highlight the foundation of the access and living wage work. So it really, again, builds on what was outlined in the Fair Start for Kids Act in 2021. This includes expanded eligibility for working connections childcare, ECAP entitlement, and transitioning to the cost of quality care rate model. Recognizing that there were delays for implementation for the eligibility expansion and ECAP entitlement, this still serves as our foundation of what we're putting forward with the Access and Living Wage Implementation Plan. Next slide, please. So in addition to building on the foundation of the Fair Start for Kids Act, the implementation plan is going to highlight several different things. It also will include the impacts for the 25-27 budget session, as we really wanted to acknowledge where we're at today, as where the proviso language was written. We were in a much different time with our budget. We also are identifying eligibility options to get aligned to that 7% of family income. We're talking about the options for distribution of living wage and benefits. We identify operational needs. The biggest part I know most you are waiting for are the actual recommendations, and then cost modeling of what this will look like, which will be made available once it is in a more digestible version. So on the next slide, we are going to begin going into the actual recommendations. But before we do so, I want to highlight that there's 4 main goals that we're working towards with this plan. The first one is that that families have access to high quality ECE that meets their needs, that we support a thriving early care and education workforce, that we leverage data and align systems, and adequate facilities for expansion of the early care and education system. On the screen, you'll see that there is the first goal and objective. In the full plan, once that's available, you'll see each implementation strategy, including why the implementation of the recommendation is important and how we would propose that to implement that specific recommendation, including the timeline for phased implementation. This plan is going to be a 10-year plus plan as we work towards phased implementation to reach both of those pillars that were identified in the proviso. As we move forward in these next slides that have the various goals and objectives, I'm not going to read through each of the strategies that are included, but I do want to highlight various things because we have done feedback sessions here with provider supports, ELAC, IPEL. We worked with Washington Communities for Children. We received a lot of feedback that really informed both from the provider and the family perspective for us to get to these recommendations. So the first one, as again, the first goal is that families have access to high quality ECE that meets their needs. So this includes creating a child care guarantee for all of Washington's families who need and choose to access care. And then again, on the slide, you can see the different ways that we hope to achieve that. The second objective on the next slide is reducing barriers and promoting equitable access for families. So this is really focusing on working connection, applications, and how we do our outreach and education for families. The third objective is increasing access to before and after school care, summer care, and care for evening and weekends. So really, how do we support those after-hour care needs of our families? This includes the role that our family, friends, and neighbors have with supporting, and also looking at what are the quality improvement supports for our school age programs. A common theme that you will see starting on this next slide is how do we support children with special needs? And we're coming from several different perspectives that you'll see throughout these slides. The first one is supporting inclusion of these children. So how do we support them? How do we look at working connection special needs rates? How do we ensure that providers have resources to supporting these children? And how do we really look to expand the supports and coordinate between programs supporting these children? As we transition, as I know many of you will be interested into this next section, is goal 2, supporting a thriving early care and education workforce. First one is that we provide living wages and benefits, right? We know that this is a key thing for retention and recruitment. This includes using the cost of quality care rate model to set working connection childcare rates that reflect the true cost of high quality care. And then there's a proposal for having a wage scale with a wage floor that allows flexibility to the employers. The next slide, my apologies, as there's going to be a lot of words on this slide, but I wanted to make sure things were grouped together for you all, is supporting childcare providers to meet requirements and deliver the high quality care that families need. So this is really going to be connected to the work that Gretchen and Brett are doing with 1648 and staff qualifications. It includes supporting our coaches, our DCYF staffing to support the various services being provided. Going back to Sandra's question about PACE, making sure there's adequate community-based professional development that's both linguistically and culturally aligned. Thinking about access to grants, enhancements, and incentives, conversations I've heard come up in the chat and out loud as well. And then how do we partner with the State Board for Community and Technical Colleges and Higher Education to support increased access, navigation of supports, and innovative practices to meet the needs of our diverse and growing workforce. And hopefully you've been able to grab the slides that Jessica put in the chat, so that way you are able to read through these more if you prefer to do so. The next slide is about increasing relational health in infant and early childhood mental health supports for children and providers in diverse settings. So we know that there was some challenges with the legislative session and things being downside. So we really want to rebuild and expand these consultation services through the participation of early achievers. And we're going to continue to explore additional strategies to meet our community needs. And if you have any questions throughout, please let me know. I am monitoring the chat. We'll go into the next slide, what gets us to goal 3. So leverage data and aligning systems. So this is where we're looking at ensuring that we're using high quality data to guide our decisions and increase accountability. This includes systems such as Merit, the information that we include on our early learning dashboards, because we want to make those informed decisions. We want to enable integrated and inclusive classrooms. So thinking about our mixed delivery system of family home providers, centers, outdoor nature base, ECAP, Head Start, transitional kindergarten. How do we ensure that someone who is serving multiple types within their program are able to be successful with navigating the different regulations and standards that are in place? And then lastly, pairing new resources with accountability to support high quality social justice and anti-judgmental implementation of programs and resources. So working towards promoting a culture of respect at the agency So that way, as we are serving families and professionals navigating our state systems, that they feel supported. I'll come back to your question here in a second, Julie. And then the last goal is related to facilities. So we know we want to increase access to care for families, but in order to do that, we need staff in those classrooms to support them. Additionally, we need to make sure we have enough childcare programs out there to support both sides of our systems. So we want to ensure that we have adequate facilities for expansion of the early care and education system. This includes maximizing capital budget investments in the Early Learning Facilities Grant Fund. You may have seen that this had an increase this last legislative system. And then additionally, the other objective that we're working towards currently is exploring and implementing new approaches to meet the long-term needs to scale access for children and families, which is currently under development. And I'll share here in just a moment. So it's not just having the buildings available, but it's also just in looking at going back to the data piece. Are the programs available in the right locations, right? Do we have the right type of care? Do we have the non-standard hours available for the families that need it? So looking at that. So building on the facility goal, we're going to now jump into the facilities project that we are currently working on. We'll go, next slide. Thank you. So this facilities project, we started in November of last year. We have shared about this before, but in case this is newer to you, what we're working towards is developing an implementation plan that looks at things like technical assistant needs, the startup supports needed from two different perspectives. What do potential providers need or existing providers to support with facility development or expansion? And then when working with different individuals or local entities such as zoning, planners, architects, what do they need in order to best support our providers and understanding the world that we have? The best example I can give to that too is thinking about square footage. As an architect, square footage is square footage, but when it comes to licensing requirements, we're looking at the usable square footage that would be for those classrooms, so helping them understand that. As part of this work, we have looked at what other states have been doing and what other things have been happening within Washington State. We've been evaluating what has been the investment over time here in Washington and building up from that as well. On this next slide, it's going to highlight the timeline that we have for this specific project. Right now, we are currently in that green and purple area. If you haven't yet, we invite you to participate in informing this work by sharing more about your experience with facility development, whether it was a new build, looking at doing a modification or expansion. But these are going to help inform the work that we're doing and the recommendations moving forward. So if that is something that you're interested in doing, we're partnered with Burke Consulting, and they are currently conducting interviews, or if a group of individuals want to come together, a focus group to talk about what were some of the challenges and then what were the innovative solutions that you came up with as you were going through that process. And then we do have a work group that is currently doing some engagement and providing some thoughts and recommendations as we get to that implementation plan process. And on the next slide, it's going to highlight the different organizations that are represented on this work group. But again, we are connecting with individuals and school districts and providers, planners, everybody to help inform outside of this work group as well. So where are we going with this work? So let's talk about next steps. Yep, there we go. So next steps is we're going to get this a final implementation plan out to legislative staff in the coming weeks. At the same time, this will be shared out with our partners, agency staff, advocates. It can also be shared out with our advisory groups, so stay tuned for that. We have cost modeling, and we are working to take it in its current format and making it available in a digestible format, so that way it's easier to understand. And then we're continuing again with those individual interviews and group focus groups being conducted with Burke related to the facilities piece. Just because this implementation plan is being submitted does not mean that we are done with this work. As I mentioned, it's a 10-year plan. So we have transitioned from the development of this plan to the implementation of what we can without additional funds at this time. This includes regularly connecting with Child Care Aware and SEIU 925 on a regular basis to talk about things like communication strategy, providing updates as related to the implementation of this roadmap. We're going to continue the work that we're doing for the development of the facility side. And then because this is a 10-year plan, we don't want to leave people wondering what's happening over the next 10 years. I'm not a very patient person, so I would not be able to wait that long not knowing what's happening. So to avoid that panic or wondering, curiosity, DCYF will be submitting a status update every 2 years. This will highlight any progress made over those 2 years, changes to investments or policies made during those legislative sessions. And then, of course, as we write things down on paper today, things might get refined when we start implementing different strategies. So what were those refinements? And there will be continued conversations over the implementation period to continue to get feedback and provide these updates as well. So on the next slide, it's open for questions. So I want to come back to Julie's question here in the chat. Wondering more about the partnership with the State Board of Technical Colleges. They do have the education certificates, so the stackable certificates. So what's the connection here with them? So with that particular recommendation, it's really about how are we partners in supporting providers with where they want to go. So it's, you know, many go to the colleges now, there might be wait lists. So looking at how do we increase access, navigating supports and resources while they're at the college, and then just how do we continue to meet the need of the diverse workforce that we have. So as we work with the state board, this could be things such as language access, various types of supports available. So this is something that still needs to be refined into greater detail of what that can look like. So if you have suggestions, definitely open up to how we can better support our workforce in partnership with the state board.
And then Gloria has her hand up. Diana? Go
Oh,
ahead,
okay.
Gloria.
Sí, gracias. Tengo 3 comentarios. El primero, veo que tienen el plan para que haya más acceso a las familias. Una de las cosas que me gustaría comentar es que a veces las familias, normalmente en Navidad, cuando a veces trabajan unas horas extras, hacen un poquito más de dinero, $1 más o más de $1. Y las familias ya no califican cuando van a reaplicar. No trabajan overtime todo el año, no ganan eso todo el año, pero a veces eso les afecta a ellos. O si en el trabajo les piden que se queden 1 hora más tarde o 2 horas más tarde porque faltó un compañero de trabajo y ellos cubren, eso aumenta su ingreso y cuando ellos van a reaplicar ya no califican. Me gustaría que ahí hubiera algunas excepciones con las familias porque por ganar $1 más, de repente, no siempre, eso les quita el beneficio del cuidado de niños y es ahí donde ellos pierden el acceso y tarda para que vuelvan otra vez a calificar. Y eso descontrola también el aprendizaje del niño. Eso es un comentario. Si hubiera algo ahí que se pusiera, que haya alguna excepción, no que trabajaste overtime 6 meses, ¿verdad? Pero si de repente en un mes trabajaste 1 hora o 5 horas, que se entienda esa parte porque no es todo el tiempo. Ese es uno. El otro con relación a las escuelas, sí necesitamos nosotros los proveedores que haya más oportunidad de tomar las clases del certificado inicial o certificado corto en nuestro idioma de la manera más fácil que sería para nosotros. Bueno, al menos a mí me está haciendo muy fácil. Es en Zoom, porque si tenemos que ir al colegio a las 6 de la tarde, tengo que mandar a los niños a casa a las 5 de la tarde para yo poder manejar dentro del tráfico y ir hasta donde yo tengo que aprender. O cerrar los sábados y no cuidar niños sábados porque tengo que ir al colegio. ¿Sí? A tomar clases, pero si es en Zoom, es más flexible. Yo he estado tomando clases desde que inició el COVID por Zoom. Empecé el certificado inicial con el North Seattle College. Hasta ahorita soy por finalizar mi bachillerato. Todo lo he hecho en Zoom, en línea, 100% en español y solamente nos reunimos en el colegio cada 3 meses, ya en persona, en Seattle, pero es una sola vez, pero estamos en constante comunicación con nuestros maestros. Entonces eso sería muy bueno para la mayoría de los proveedores que no, pues no es que sea excusa, pero tenemos que cerrar nuestro daycare temprano porque no nos alcanza para pagar a alguien más que se quede esas horas que nosotros estudiamos a tomar tus clases en tu casa. ¿Sí? Y si cierras a las 6, pues rapidito ya estás con la computadora, ¿verdad? Y entras a tu clase y despides al último niño. Sería muy práctico. Lo otro de necesidades especiales, ahí también cuando una familia va a aplicar, debería haber una pequeña nota de que la tabla de ganancias no aplique para ellos. Porque a veces hay familias que tienen niños con necesidades especiales y cuando ven la tabla de pobreza, nivel de pobreza, y si ellos ganan como un poco más, y más si son personas que trabajan, son independientes, tienen su propio trabajo, no califican, pero un niño de necesidades especiales requiere de más servicios, de más atención y ellos deberían de ser aceptados. Muchos niños de necesidades especiales no califican y están fuera, no recibiendo los servicios y no se están desarrollando como deben desarrollarlos. Son los que más necesitan y esas familias son las que más apoyo necesitan. Ustedes estaban mencionando que en el plan tienen mental health. Sería muy bueno si esa mental health trajera también una oportunidad de que se dé una preevaluación o un pre-assessment a esos niños de necesidades especiales que están en lista de espera por 12 meses o 18 meses que no han sido evaluados porque no hay suficientes profesionales que hagan ese trabajo en las ciudades pequeñas. Entonces también es otra cosa que me gustaría que lo pudiéramos platicar, que si realmente queremos apoyar a las familias, abrir esas avenidas. Y la última, ¿cómo podríamos hacerle entender a la legislatura o a las ciudades que nosotros los Family Home Cares no se nos apliquen los mismos códigos que le aplican a los centros? Porque cuando uno va a hacer algún cambio y uno va a pedir un permiso a la ciudad, empiezan a aplicarnos los códigos de los centros, empiezan que tienes que tener 6 estacionamientos en tu casa, 2 estacionamientos. Nosotros somos un family home care en el hogar, no somos un edificio grande. Entonces, ¿qué códigos son los que realmente deben aplicar a nosotros? Porque cada ciudad tiene diferentes códigos y eso es lo que está perjudicando, afectando a muchos proveedores, como ahorita con lo de los, ¿cómo le llaman? No recuerdo, ¿cómo le llaman para la extensión de 16 niños que tienen que tener lo del agua? Voy a decir sprinkles del agua arriba en el techo de la casa. Uno habla con alguien, uno va a pedir un permiso y nos empiezan a aplicar códigos de centros, códigos de escuelas. Nosotros somos un family home care. ¿Cómo podría hacerse esa diferencia? ¿Cómo nos podrían ustedes ayudar para que no nos estén considerando como edificio grande? Gracias, eso es lo único que quería comentar.
Thank you, Gloria. And then we'll go to Jacqueline here in a minute, but I know that Jason is had the opportunity to maybe discuss at least the first question there, if that works at this time, Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And hi,
Yeah.
Umberto. Good to see you. There's 2 questions regarding subsidy that I can address, and then somebody else can discuss the others. When the first question was regarding how subsidy looks at income and accounts for seasonal differences. When we look at income for working connections childcare, we try to look at what the average income is over the year. And there's different ways for us to do that. If a family is regularly working in seasonal work or has patterns throughout the year where certain months are have more hours or working overtime, we can expand the amount of time frame that we're looking at income to average that out. We just have to work with the family, and the PBS who's working the case needs to work with the family, and they work together to be able to tell that story. The other question related to eligibility for families with special needs. This is something that DCYF has looked at a couple times. That will require some additional funding and a request through the legislature to expand eligibility for families, specifically if we were looking at a, say, categorical eligibility or families with children with special needs, that just would require additional investments.
Thanks, Jason. Nicole, do you want to jump in before we go to
Yeah, I
Jacqueline?
want to stay on the subsidy topic for a
Yeah.
moment, and realizing this is a really good opportunity, I think, to share some information with this group. So one, there are some really exciting things happening, as Janelle mentioned, with some of the outreach that is occurring related to subsidy. And we have more families than ever who are accessing subsidy. So we have 37,000 families who have paid cases, which is about 62,000 children. That does mean, though, that our contact center is a bit overloaded right now, as Janelle is noting. And so families are experiencing longer than normal wait times. Sometimes they are actually disconnected because there's so many folks calling in. So I'm going to put in the chat. We really want to drive people to Washington Connections right now for any of their changes or updates. And we do not have the ability to hire more staff right now. That would require funding from the legislature. So just wanted to note that. But what I will say is that our contact center staff they are so dedicated. They are working overtime. And I just want to acknowledge probably the deep frustration for families as they are really working to get this needed care. Now, when we get their applications, Jason can talk a little bit more about how we can backdate or some of those pieces. I know that doesn't help in the exact moment, but I'll drop in the chat the working or the, excuse me, Washington Connections online piece. And that's the best thing we can ask you all to share with your families to drive them to that space at this point in time.
Thank you, Nicole. Oh, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick. Thanks for asking the question, allowing us to talk through this. I will give an update that we expect today or tomorrow to be the last day where we have forced disconnects. We have very few forced disconnects today, and this aligns with our annual churn of all of the changes that happen with back to school. So what that means is folks calling will have a little bit longer wait times, but we'll be able to get through the rest of this week. And we'll be able to turn our attention to those applications, and we will backdate applications, change of circumstances, and when families get through, we'll work with them to set up the timeframes for providers and when they made those changes to make sure all of the payments are made and providers are made whole when providing care this month, because providers know that changing our authorizations is delayed in September. So that's how we can help for the rest of the week.
Thank you. Jacqueline, please feel free to come off mute if you are available.
Sí, solamente dos comentarios que tengo y uno es sobre cuando las familias aplican para el cuidado de niños. A mí me da mucho pesar que familias que son los dos padres universitarios y que estudiaron para ellos poder tener un mejor salario, cuando aplican para el cuidado de niños, pues les denegan porque les niegan porque no les ofrecen un copago. Y yo pienso que si esas familias, esas familias de personas jóvenes que estudiaron y que hicieron su universidad, ellos también tienen derecho a que el Estado les pueda proporcionar un copayment para el cuidado de sus hijos, porque hay, o sea, se ve en monto, se ve mucho dinero el que ganan, pero cuando ya se hacen todas las deducciones de lo que pagan, en muchas ocasiones a esas parejas no les queda el dinero para poder pagar un buen cuidado infantil, ya que las tarifas pues son altas, entonces no pueden, tienen que recurrir a otro tipo de cuidados donde no se deja en un lugar como los cuidados en casa o un centro, porque en realidad el dinero para pagar el cuidado de dos niños no queda ese dinero. Entonces, yo pienso que deberían de hacer de una manera que esas familias también pudieran tener un copayment, aunque fuera alto, pero que se les pueda decir, este es tu copayment si tú quieres el cuidado para los niños, pero desafortunadamente a esas familias no se les ofrece porque simplemente les dicen, no, es que tu nivel de ingreso no está en la parte que podamos nosotros poderte decir, este es tu copayment. Entonces me parece desafortunadamente ese punto. Y otro que quiero comentar es sobre los niños con necesidades especiales. Cuando uno les dice a los padres que para que nos puedan pagar un poco más por el cuidado de esos niños, tienen que ir a pedir una carta al doctor que les indique que el niño tiene alguna necesidad. Y eso en ocasiones muchos padres se deniegan que el niño tiene alguna necesidad porque a veces es déficit de atención o el niño tiene un diabetes y ellos dicen, no, es que mi niño está bien, no necesita un cuidado extra. Y de verdad que el autismo, diferentes necesidades especiales o algunos necesidades de enfermedades mentales que no son en realidad una enfermedad mental fuerte, pero debido al COVID yo he encontrado muchos niños con ciertas deficiencias que sí necesitan un cuidado un poco más uno a uno. Entonces, a nosotras no nos pagan. Nosotros llamamos y decimos, el niño presenta estas características y nos dicen, claro que sí, tiene que ser un doctor el que te dé esa forma que diagnostique al niño, pero a veces eso es una tardanza mucho que a veces los padres las hacen, pero yo pienso si uno puede mandarles qué trabajo hace con los niños y pues si, que hubiese algún formato de menos tiempo para nosotros nos puedan pagar esa otra tarifa por ese tipo de niños, no esperar situaciones que a veces vienen siendo de 6 meses hasta que el doctor les dé la cita, los diagnostique. Y eso es mi pregunta, que en realidad a veces son elevados tiempos. Gracias.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
I'll take the first one, and then Jason, I'll let you speak to the second one. Thank you, Jacqueline. This is part of why the access and living wage proviso was put out there, is so that childcare can be affordable. So over the next 10 years, we're working towards where families are paying no more than 7% of their household income. So where those families today are just above the income eligibility, in the future we'll get there. It will require legislative funding and some policy to get us there, but that's what we're working towards, so that more families are eligible to have that benefit available to them. Before I pass it to Jason, I just want to acknowledge Gloria. I know you had a couple other comments. We'll follow up on those in the feedback loop. And then Jason, the special needs.
Thanks, Diana. Providers can initiate the application for special needs by completing the application, but one of the requirements for the completion of that application is a diagnosis for the child's disability. That doesn't have to be just a letter from the doctor. It can be a variety of different things, but that currently is one of the requirements. And for us to make a change to that would require rule changes, but also again an increase in money or investment from the ledge, and we would need legislative approval to make those changes. I think everybody here probably knows, but anytime we make a change that requires that would cost more for the program or change our program to cost more money, we have to ask for permission and get additional investment from the ledge to do that.
All right. Do we have any other questions, or Diana, do you have any other comments for this session?
I just appreciate these questions and comments. This is exactly why we do the work that we do, to support you as providers and the families that you're working with. We'll follow up in the feedback, and anytime you have more questions, I'm happy to come back and present, and hope to bring more to you in the future.
Diana, thank you so much for being here today and taking the time to be with us. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you, Nicole and Jason and others, for stepping in as well with answers and clarifications for things that we are talking about. And thank you to all of our providers for their great comments. So we have another mentee that will pop up in the chat from Jessica for this session. So if you could take a couple of minutes to provide any feedback on this topic for a presenter, or additional comments or questions that were not brought forth over the course of the last 45 minutes. What we're going to do next is we're going to have a break from 11 to 11:20. And then at 11:20, we will be back on. Matt Judge will be with us to talk about the cost of quality care and market rate survey. And then at noon, Jennifer Helseth will be with us to talk about health consultation and immunization registry access. So two great topics coming up this afternoon as well to follow up the two great topics that we had this morning. So please put any feedback that you have on our most recent topic in the Menti, and then enjoy a short 20-minute break, and we will be back online at 11:20.
Okay, looks like we're returning. Break's over. We are moving on to our next topic, but before we do, I just want to remind everyone that we are talking slowly for interpretation services, and use that button at the bottom. If you joined late, there's the interpretation button at the bottom where you would select English or Spanish or how you want the interpretation for you. So we're moving on to the topic of the cost of quality care and market rate survey. We have Matt Judge, our Federal Initiatives and Collaboration Administrator. So we're going to receive an overview of the upcoming 2025 market rate survey, including its purpose, how provider input directly impacts child care subsidy rates, and how to participate. Providers will be encouraged to help spread awareness and support provider engagement in the survey. So welcome, Matt. Glad you're here.
Thanks, Julie, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name's Matt. I'm really pleased to be with you today, and thanks for having me. If you'll go to the next slide, I'll give an overview of what I'm going to present here. I was with you all, I think, back in July, so I'm just going to give a recap of some of the background information about the cost of quality care and market rate study, and then give you an update on some providers' feedback on the draft study and changes we've made to the study based on that feedback. There was also a feedback loop from that last meeting, and also a feedback loop from the broader ELAC committee. And I'll just provide you information in response to the questions and comments that were in that feedback loop. And then finally, I'll just let you know the timelines and next steps for this survey, and there'll be an opportunity for a little bit of feedback if you'd like. Next slide, please. So again, this is recap from information I provided in July, so I'll just go through this quickly. But the reason we call this the cost of quality care and market rate study is because there are two sides to this, or two components. Federal rules require the states to use either a market rate survey or an alternative methodology to set the Working Connections subsidy base rate. And Washington State has received federal approval to do either of those. So we've, in the past, done a market rate study, which asks providers what they charge private paying families and then sets subsidy rates based on that data. But we also know that families can't afford what it actually costs to provide care. And so a different way to set subsidy rates is to learn what it actually costs providers to do their work and then set subsidy rates based on those. And so we've asked for permission and received it from the federal government to move to a cost and quality model once the legislature decides that the state should do that. Next slide, please. Just a little bit of information here about what the federal government requires for a study of this kind and some state rules around it. Whichever method we use, we have to take a look at variations based on geography and provider types and age of child. And we also have to describe how many providers participate in Working Connections subsidy and the barriers they face to participating in it. For a cost of quality care study, we have to analyze the cost of care necessary to meet health and safety requirements, quality and staffing requirements, and the cost of higher quality care. It used to be that we did this study every 3 years, but legislation passed in the last legislative session requires us to do it every other year now. And the first report is due June 1st, 2026. And so that's why, if it seems like we just recently did the study, that's why we're doing it again. Next slide, please. On the cost of quality care side, if you're wondering what assumptions go into that, what does cost of quality care mean? DCYF let deciders tell us, providers tell us what cost of quality care should mean. In 2023, we worked with Child Care Aware to convene a diverse group of providers. They told us that they thought that cost of quality care meant a living wage and benefits for the staff in early care and education programs, time to engage with families, for example, in parent conferences. So you need more staff in order to have the time to do that. More time for planning, planning their classes. So you need more staff in order to do that. Strong education materials and curriculum, and plenty of time for staff to engage in professional development supports. So when we're talking about cost of quality care, we're talking about a standard that providers advised how we set it, and that's pretty strong. Next slide, please. So in this study, what they meant, providers, when they said living wage, was the MIT living wage standard. And so that tells us what it's going to cost to for staff to meet that standard, or for their pay to meet that standard. And we also already have information about what it costs to have the quality enhancements that early educator design team recommended. So when we're doing this study, we're really trying to find out, for the cost of quality care side, what are the non-personnel costs, this gray box here. And that means things like mortgage, rent, the cost of utilities, cost of liability insurance, those overhead costs. So for the cost of quality care side of this study, we're asking questions and seeking data about that. Next slide, please. We already talked about this in July, but we really are looking to increase participation of providers. And we, in the last study in 2024, an area we could really grow that was in school-age providers. We're looking to get more participation from all providers, but particularly those. And it's really important in those lower population areas where there are just a few providers. If we only have a few responding to questions about what their market rates are, or what the costs of their rent and mortgage are, if there are mistakes in that data, or they're just not true to other providers there, it can really make a difference in the quality of our data. Of course, we want to update the overhead cost data that I just talked about. And in order to increase that participation, we're really trying to streamline this survey so that it's faster to finish, so that more people are able to finish. And then in the report that we're required to submit, where we talk about what we learned in the survey, we just want to make that more streamlined, easier to understand, and easier to parse the difference between cost of quality care and the market rate information that's contained in it. This way, the legislature is empowered to continue to set rates based on the market rate, or change over to cost of quality care if they want to do that. Next slide, please. So at our last meeting, there were several questions or comments about this material. So I just wanted to provide some information on that. Folks asked, why are the rates for family homes so low, even though we participate in all of DCYF's surveys, that's true. Licensed family home providers do participate in the surveys. The rates for family homes are collectively bargained. SEIU 925 and DCYF come together for bargaining, and that's where those rates are determined. And we use the data from the market rate survey in those negotiations. And then the legislature ratifies that collective bargaining agreement when we reach agreement between the union and DCYF. And as I said, the negotiation is based on the rates that the licensed family home providers tell us they are charging in the private market in the market rate survey. So currently, the rates in licensed family homes as of July 1st are set based on the 85th percentile of the market rate survey. And that doesn't mean 85% of the market rate. It means that the rate that is paid in subsidy is higher than 85% of the provider's rates for a given child in their geographic area. And that means the subsidy rate is generally higher than what families are being charged in the private market for licensed family homes. So that's what's happening across the board. Obviously, an individual provider's rate may differ, and the data in the market rate survey is, of course, subject to quality issues, like if we have a geographic area where not a lot of providers told us about their private pay rates. I think I saw a comment in the chat. Julie just saying, I was surprised to see that question, considering family homes receive a supplemental amount around $2,000 each month. That's correct. In the collective bargaining agreement, there's a cost of care enhancement for licensed family home providers who serve children receiving subsidy benefits. It's $2,000 a month or $2,100 a month, I think, somewhere in there. Next slide, please. ELAC also had a feedback loop with some questions, so I'll just summarize those there here for you, for your benefit. Are license exempt programs part of this survey? If you mean family, friends, and neighbors providers, the answer is no. So we're asking the rates that licensed programs charge private paying families. One thing I should be clear about and clarify if I misstated in our last meeting, we also ask certified providers. So an example of that would be a provider on tribal lands, and that tribe has agreed that DCYF will come in and conduct, a licensing like inspection and basically certify that if the program were under the jurisdiction of DCYF, that they could, that they would meet licensing requirements. And so those programs, when they serve children who receive subsidy benefits, they are also paid these licensed rates, whether they're family homes or centers. So we survey them as well. So if I said we don't, last meeting, I apologize. I clarified that we do survey those providers. There are other providers where the tribe licenses them and they can also receive subsidy payments, but we do not survey them because their models can look vastly different from licensed and certified programs. Next question, can you elaborate on the requirements of the market rate survey and the compliance of which year we're using? It's my understanding we're still using the 2021 market rate survey to set provider center rates. At what point in time are we out of compliance at the federal level by not using a more recent market rate survey? So that's true. The federal rules say that the states must set their subsidy base rates based on the latest market rate survey, and center rates are still based on the 2021 market rate survey when we have a more recent 2024 survey. So we are currently out of compliance here. I'll note that the legislature in the 2025 session scheduled center rates to increase July 1st, 2026 to 85th percentile of the 2024 market rate survey so that they would be on par with licensed family home rates in terms of percentile of the market rate. So until then, we're out of compliance. Family home rates are currently set to, as I already mentioned, the 2024 survey. I see a question in the chat from Janelle. Regarding school age providers, it looks like the official answer is that school age only center is not required or able to be enrolled in early achievers. This means that we are not eligible for the increased rate based on our level, but early learning covers children up to age 8. And I will hold off on answering that for someone who's more of an expert. So we'll follow up on that. Next slide, please. In case you're wondering about that center rate increase, this is what it'll look like. So on the left-hand side, if you're able to see this decently, you'll see the current rates. And then on the right, you can see what those rates would go to. This is by region and child age category. Almost everybody's rate increases. A couple stay the same. And then you can see at the bottom of these charts what the total cost is to pay for the current rates on the left-hand side in these prior years and the cost for 2 years. And then at the bottom right, you can see the additional cost to increase the rates to the level in that chart. So I'll just pause for a second to let you look at that.
Matt, is there a schedule for how often rate increases are occur?
No, these are set by the legislature, and I don't believe that legislation has established a schedule, just that this one would occur in July 1.
Okay, thank you.
Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I think provider supports or ELAC recommended that we have some testing by providers on the draft survey because it's so important in determining rates, or how the legislature determines rates. So really appreciate that feedback. We worked with provider supports to get some folks to volunteer. We worked with the Center Association who provided some volunteers. And then SEIU 925 provided some volunteers, and we got some really great in-depth feedback. Just to summarize what some of the feedback was and changes we made based on it. Here are some notes on that. There was some very unclear discussion of classrooms in the family home section, which is totally inappropriate or incorrect. So thank you for the feedback to change that around. So we made a change to that. There won't be discussion of classrooms in terms of staff, rates, any of it with regard to the family home section. We asked questions about what providers are currently paying their staff, and there was a lack of clarity whether we were asking specifically about an annual salary or other timeframes that you might pay your provider or your staff on. So we just clarified that to be more neutral. You can enter how you're paying, whether it's an annual salary, an hourly amount, or anything else. So thanks for that feedback. We had some feedback about there not being enough space to enter other types of staff, meaning, you have your assistants, your lead teachers, but what if there are other types of employees that aren't in the 6 categories or however many it was we have in the survey. So we added more spaces and just clarified that we would ask for 1 position for each other space, and then you can list the salary for that position. There was another question that was unclear about cost per square foot. And so it would be unclear what kind of backup information you'd need to have in order to answer that question. So we broke it out into 2 parts so that we can separate out those 2 things and make it simpler to answer that question. And then there was just a lot of language that probably didn't match up with what is used in the profession or what the reviewers felt would resonate or make sense to providers answering this. So we revised a fair amount of the language based on those comments. So thank you so much for everyone who participated in doing a review and the quick timeline that you turned around the information, and really appreciate that. Next slide. So you might recall in the 2024 survey, we were able to give a $100 gift card for participation. Really was hoping to be able to do that again, just as a token of appreciation of the amount of time it takes to fill out this survey and all the other challenges that are participating or that are also require your attention. Unfortunately, the legislature didn't fund provide us any more funding for the increased frequency of this survey. So we're not able to put it at quite the $100 level. But we will offer a $50 gift card for folks who participate. And hope in the future where the legislature can fund us a little bit more so that we can support providers to participate. And as I said, if I said that certified providers weren't surveyed in this survey, just want to correct that. We will be reaching out to them and sending them the survey and asking them to participate. Next slide, please. I see a comment from Lois Martin. Why not offer an hour of STARS credit? That is a very interesting idea, Lois. I will take that back to our team and see what I can find out about that. Survey, so timelines. We're going to send out from DCYF a communication on September 29, just hopefully priming providers saying, hey, it's coming in a couple of days. You're going to get this survey. Really appreciate your participation, and let them know all the information about the background, the incentive, how the information is used, really focus on the why. We'll actually deploy the survey, or I should say our partners, Western Washington University, will send out their own communication with a link to the online survey, a QR code, and other information. Then we will send out physical letters to providers October 5th. A couple weeks later, postcard reminders. And after that, we'll start monitoring kind of the returns, how many providers are participating, and then determine a follow-up contact schedule for those folks that haven't yet taken the survey based on what we're seeing. Starting early January, or well, I should back up. In the middle of December, we'll close the survey. And then in the beginning of January, we'll start drafting the report based on the data we're receiving. Then there's an internal review period in the spring. This is now a legislative report, so we really have to go over it with a fine-tooth comb in DCYF. So we'll do that for 90 days between May and March. And then based on legislation from 2025 session, we'll submit that report June 1st. Julie asks, can licensors send to their providers? That's a great idea too. So I will work with licensing division to see if communication from licensors can go out and what method would be best for that. If you have suggestions on what you think would work, I'm certainly all ears. And that was kind of part of the feedback part at the end of this. Next slide, please. So if you have other suggestions about study outreach and communications, I welcome those. If you have thoughts about how we can spread word here at DCYF, particularly as we're, seeing providers that haven't yet responded, I welcome that. And then if you've had a chance to take a look at the report and have thoughts about how it could be better, more streamlined, clearer, certainly welcome those. So I will just, I've talked at you a bunch. I'll stop and give you a moment to give me feedback if you'd like.
Well, I just want to thank you, Matt, for incorporating all of the feedback that you did into the survey. So I look forward to seeing the survey and knowing that it's already been, worked on by providers and changes were made, and it's going to be easier to understand the questions. So thank you for incorporating feedback.
Thank you for the idea and for everybody who participated.
So maybe we can go to the earlier question that was for Nicole, or probably Nicole could handle that, from Janelle.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about the early achievers piece. And I think I'll drop a couple of links in the chat too when I'm done talking. So there's a couple of things. So one, as early achievers went to scale, it was really meant to really think about how we can support educational outcomes for children, giving parents clear and easy accessible information about the quality of care, support just continuous quality improvement, and also, again, a big focus on school readiness of children in care. And so it was really focused in on the birth to 5 space. When the Early Start Act passed, there was recognition that we needed to think about how we could incorporate school age components of this as well. And so there was something called the Expanded Learning Opportunities pilot, in which we looked at some school age pieces for school age only spaces and did a report to the legislature. Extending early achievers to school age only was not funded. It would take additional funds from the legislature to extend it to school age only. However, we learned a lot from that process. And so for our settings that serve birth through school age, there is an opportunity for them to submit video highlights in the revised early achievers process. So recognition, of course, that school age or early learning, really does span birth to 8 or 9. However, there is not funding for the school age only component of early achievers. So I'll put the links to the Early Achievers RCW and the link to some of the pieces about the Early Start Act, just so you all have that information.
Thank you, Nicole.
Yeah, thanks for jumping in and answering that. Are there any other questions for Matt about the market rate survey? And I do see that Janelle commented, and I mean, we all would love stars for being here today. And I know that this has come up before as a suggestion. I hope that somebody can look into this, but I don't know who that would be.
Yeah, so it has come up before. And as you were asking that question, Lois and Janelle, it was triggering that for me. And so I see Tiff is on here, and she and I and some others are connecting about some other pieces this afternoon. So we will add this to our list of things to talk about.
That's wonderful, because we would love to get increased participation in this committee. It's such a valuable opportunity to gain information and be part of feedback for policies that are being created. So if they have that incentive, hey, I can get stars credit for showing up, I think, we would see more participation here, which would be wonderful. Well, do you want to put the Amenti up, Jessica? Look, it seems like we're done with this portion. Thank you, Matt, for all the information and the collaboration.
Thanks, everyone.
So if everybody will just click on that Menti link and provide any feedback that you have on this section, market rate survey, if you have any feedback. And I don't know if our next presenter, I know she's here. I don't know if she's available to start early, if Jennifer Helseth could chime in and let us know.
Yep,
Otherwise, we
I
might
can
need
start
to.
early if you want, or you can take a break, whatever your schedule looks like. So
We just took a break, so that's
perfect.
wonderful that you're
Okay.
available a little early.
Mhm.
We're just gonna move right along then. So again, I want to remind people that we're trying to speak somewhat slowly so that interpreters are able to keep up. And if you did not yet select the interpretation icon at the bottom of your screen and select English, you can still do that now. Okay. All right, so we are moving on. We've got our health consultant. Oh, sorry. She is the health systems analyst, Jennifer Helseth, and she's going to provide an update on the role of child care health consultation and the value of the immunization registry. So welcome, Jennifer. We're going to jump right in.
Perfect. I don't have any slides today, just because I don't. So I'm going to talk a little bit about childcare health consultation. I know I've come and I've spoken to this group several times over the years about childcare health consultation, and I'm going to try and remember to talk slower. I'm sorry. I'm already like speeding up. But so childcare health consultation, for any of you who serve centers that have infants in them, you are aware that you have to have a childcare health consultant come visit you once a month. This has been a requirement for, it looks like, if I reach back in the system, for 30 going on 40 years in the state of Washington. So this is not a new requirement. It is, however, something that we have had varied amounts of support for, either by the Department of Health or by local health departments. And so for the last 8+ years now, I've been attempting to support this from my role. And it's only a little tiny minuscule piece of my job. So I have been moderately successful in some times and more successful at others. So I would say at this point in time that I'm choosing to use this as a silver lining to some of our budget things that have happened over the last year. And then I have a little bit more time to dedicate to childcare health consultation. So I want to show you kind of where we are sitting in our system, and then also a little bit of a preview about where we're going. So if we were in the room, I would look around at all of your faces and I would see either nods or smiles about those of you who are familiar with childcare health consultation or who have good nurses that you have worked with over the years. I always get some frowns from people who may have had trouble finding a nurse or who have had, interesting relationships, all of which are things that I have the ability and a little bit of capacity at this point in time to be able to assist with. So I'm going to start by showing you the website that I have created to be able to help support childcare health consultation at DCYF. So hopefully I can get this to work correctly because, technology is awesome, except for when it's not. Okay, it looks like it's showing. Perfect. Thanks, Julie. So this is the childcare health consultation kind of base page. It lives in the childcare early learning providers section. The reason I'm showing this to you all is twofold, maybe threefold. One, it's important that you know what it is. So this really has a really basic description of what childcare health consultation is. In previous parts of our world, it was called infant nurse consultation, but we are really trying to move away from that because it also incorporates the infant and early childhood mental health consultation, as well as nutritional, and there's several other different types that, as we're trying to, as a society, kind of move to a more holistic way of looking at things, we're trying to call it something different. However, in Washington, it still does look the same because that's where our WACs are sitting right now. So this page A has a description about what childcare health consultants should be doing, and then also what services they should be providing. This is also right here where it says submit your monthly report is the place that your nurses should be submitting their notice that they have been visiting your centers every month. I know this is currently not happening consistently across the state because when I checked right before I came into this meeting, over the last 6 weeks, I've only received 31 reports. And I know that there are about 850 centers licensed to serve infants at this time. So that means there's a large proportion of centers that are not yet reporting. So this is one of the pieces that I'm going to be working on moving into this next year. Just for your own knowledge, as you're knowing what the nurses are reporting, they are not reporting any information on the specifics of what's happening in your center. They are reporting on the types of things that they are talking about with your center staff, the types of things that they could use to improve their practice, but not necessarily any identifiable information about your centers at this time. I have grand ambitions that at some point this could be connected to our licensing system and perhaps have it be a one-stop shop so that the nurses can report, the centers can see the reports, the licensor, if they needed to, could see the report. I could see it, but at this point in time, we don't have the technological capacity to do that. So
Jennifer, is it
it,
is it a
no,
specific form?
it
Or do
is.
they
So,
just upload notes?
no, I can actually click on it and show you. It's a Microsoft form that they fill in, and it's like, you can see this, it's like, what's your contact information? That's so I can get a hold of them. It won't let me move on to the next screen unless I enter information, but let's see if I can get it to do something. See if it'll go. Okay. So these are the types of questions. Thank you, Julie. That's a great question. So it's saying what, like what period are you reporting for today? Because some people will put their notes in for like the month of August, or some will do August 15th to September 15th, or, I just want to know what's the period of time in which they're reporting for. How many sites is the nurse currently contracted with? How many infant rooms did they visit? What counties are they currently serving in? Let's see if it'll let me go. I think these are all required. Go back and delete this later. No, option one needs to be. Oh, okay. And then, so largely this reporting feature actually came out of a need that came from a legislative report that I wrote several years ago at this point, talking about the need for or my desire, our agency's desire, to be able to have childcare health consultation available for all childcare centers across the state, anyone that would like it, as opposed to only licensed centers that serve infants. So it's like a subset of a subset. And to be able to do that without it being without there being a fee for childcare providers. But what the legislature came back with was A, this is really expensive, and B, we don't have any information that's specific to the state of Washington, because all of the information that we had was on a national basis. And while it's applicable, every state is different, as anyone who has lived in another state or who has dealt with childcare licensing in another state would know that if you know one state, you know one state. So we're really trying to figure out how, where are there more nurses who are doing this work? Do they have friends? How much are you charging? Because one of the things we know is when I did a first analysis, 7 years ago about this, there's wide varieties of what people are charging, because all of the folks doing this work are independent consultants. And so there's no, rate setting, there's no, fee schedule. It's based off of the relationship that you have developed with your consultant, with your center. So there is one of the requests at the very beginning from both childcare providers as well as childcare health consultants was the need for a training. And so I was able to work with a graduate student a handful of years ago now to create a kind of like childcare health consultation 101 training. So I'm making on here, it has the link to it so that every nurse that reports has the link to go directly to the training and have they completed it. This is one of the things that I'm updating this year as well, because as time goes on, links change and that sort of thing. So I'll be updating it. And then, have you spoken to me? I'm the DCYF CCHC program manager. One of the things that is supposed to happen is I keep a list, and I will get to this as soon as I get off the sharing part of this page, but I keep a list of all of the nurses who are doing this work across the state so that I can ensure that they have the most up-to-date information, that they have any resources that they need. And also that the childcare centers, the providers, are getting the services that they need as well. So if a center has a nurse that they've hired independently, which is absolutely fine, that nurse is not necessarily connected to the system, the broader system, if I haven't spoken to them. So this is their opportunity to do that. And then there's 3 communities of practice for folks who are working in health across the state. So this is an opportunity for them to say, are they familiar with any of these? And then this is one of the other things I'm going to show you. The third piece that people requested was, it was like, how do I find nurses? How do nurses find me? How do you get a nurse trained? And then the other is like, how do we kind of keep track of all that? And for the last 8 years, it's consisted of 2 spreadsheets on my desktop, which is exponentially more system than existed when I started, and is still not a system, because that makes me the weak link. Like if I were to get sick or to leave this job for any reason, then that information goes away because it's in my head. And that's not great. So I have been working really hard to try to come up with some sort of a registry to be able to make that happen. King County, through their Best Starts for Kids initiative, was able to come up with one on their that lives just for King County. And so it's a great, I've been able to work with them to make sure that everything that they have done is compatible with what we're doing at the state level, but it's still only applicable to King County. So we at this point have a little bit of a duplicative system, but it's still fantastic. And I'm looking forward to being able to kind of build upon it as we move forward. So what are the common concerns? What resources could you use as a nurse, or could your centers use? Because we can help them find that, since they're often working on their own. And then, do you have any questions for us? Because sometimes it's like, yeah, I'd love to serve some new centers. Or when I talked to one of my centers, they had a huge question about, I spent quite a bit of time in the last couple of weeks talking with nurses about bed bugs, as a for example. And
Jennifer?
Yeah.
Sorry, could you slow down a bit for our interpreters?
Sure, sorry. Believe it or not,
you.
I'm actually talking slow for me. So I'm like, I will talk even slower. I apologize.
And when you have a minute, I do have a few questions.
Yeah, let me close out of this. And then before I move on to the next thing, Julie, you ask your questions.
Okay, so I do not have infants,
Mhm.
but I would be interested in, possibly. So I am wondering, is it an appointment, or is it they drop in like licensors do? So that's my first question.
Okay.
If it's an appointment.
If you don't have infants, it could be an appointment. If you have infants, there's 2 different philosophies on visits, and they are either, the nurse comes the 3rd Thursday of every month at 4:00, or they come at some point the 3rd week, and they really depend on, like, when I was doing visits, I had 22 sites, 21 of them I had 0 concerns about. And so had a standing appointment that I would be there at the same time, because I knew that no matter when I came, it was going to look exactly the same. And I had no concerns about the health or the safety of the children in the center. That 22nd center, however, every time I came in, there was something happening that made me very anxious for the health and safety of the children in the center. And so I did not tell them when I was coming, because I didn't want them to put on a show for me, because the point of me being there is to help and be an assistance, to help be that voice of health, so that you don't have to be, right? Like
It
that's
could be, but at the same time, if they don't appreciate that partnership, they can just move on to a different nurse consultant.
And that happens on occasion. We have had some centers, and we've also had some nurses who have called and said, I can't continue to serve this site because I can't agree that this is a healthy and safe environment.
So you showed the report that the nurses fill out. I'm wondering if there's some kind of survey or report link for providers to click on to tell you how their experience was with the nurse. And I'm also wondering if the nurses have specific knowledge of childcare. Do they go through a training? What's the process? What's that?
I have not had a survey, and I love that idea. We've not had the capacity, and I don't mean capacity, I mean like we've not had the capability to be able to do any of these surveys up until now. The reason that I'm showing this survey is that this is new. Like, this is month 2 of having this. Up until now, we had a Survey Monkey, that was really clunky and was housed in the communications department. So like I couldn't even access the instructions unless it was downloaded into, a big, huge so it's new. I love that idea and I will figure out how to do something with that. On the whole, when childcare providers contact me looking for a nurse, because that's the instructions at this point in time, on the website, because I don't have a registry, I often have a discussion with them about the experiences that they've had. So I am not part of the licensing team, which makes me kind of sit outside. I'm not part of the regulatory structure. So often childcare providers feel very free to tell me exactly what's going on in their world. And I appreciate that because I want that to be the case. I don't ever want to refer a nurse, for example, who is providing a bad service or people who are uncomfortable with. And there have been a handful of nurses over time that I have, not referred to because they didn't get it for the best description I have of it. This is a really interesting niche field. There is no training in a nursing school. To answer your other question about the information that they have, there is no training in a nursing school that provides any kind of frame of reference for what childcare health consultation is and or could be. So, like I said, I created a training for the childcare health consultants that gives them a basis of what they should expect as they're coming in. A, B, then I also spend about an hour talking with each nurse before they go onto my registry list so that I know exactly where they're coming from and what their understanding is. There is an expectation in WAC that they have some amount of child care development, not child care, but child development experience. Most come from pediatrics or emergency care, or our school nurses. Those are kind of the basis of where most of the nurses are in the world, in our world at this point in time. Is there room for growth in that? Absolutely. There just hasn't been the ability up until now. So did I answer all of your questions, Julie? I think there might have been one more I missed.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. I do think that, if you've developed some trainings for these nurses,
Yep.
seems like it might be beneficial to have some providers work with you and view the trainings and see what feedback they have that could be incorporated into some trainings.
Yes.
I know that you're going to be talking about how to access immunization records of children. But first I wanted to go to Dana, who has a question.
Yep.
Hello. Thanks, Jennifer, for all your work on this. A lot of this is new information. Back, I've been in this for a long time, and back when the health department was doing it, I found that it was very informative at that time, and I liked my relationship that I had with the health department. I was sad to see that go, which I think you said was because of cost. So then it's just, it's passed on to us providers, and I think that this is a thing that comes up a lot in different spaces about how to access the nurses. And so I appreciate this because now I'll direct those people to you. And as far as my situation goes, we just don't find value in it at all. It's more of a headache and an annoyance, honestly. We've been very lucky that we just contract with a current parent that is in the field, and we just trade tuition, so we don't even really notice the cost. But to be honest, I mean, she comes in and, do you guys need anything? No. I mean, it's just, I know we're a different program. I guess my question is this a state requirement or a federal requirement that we have these nurse consultants?
So thank you, Dana. I'm sorry you haven't had the value. And what I will tell you is that, just to answer that, and then I'll come back to it. It is a state requirement. It's in WAC. It is a best practice standard, as is stated by, the School Nurses Association, Head Start, the AAP. Like there's, it is considered best practice standard to have nurse visits in childcare centers. The other piece that I would say is that it's not best practice to have a current parent for several reasons. One, I mean, there's no rule against it, so you're not doing anything wrong. but I do generally dissuade, like I would never have visited the center where my girls were in care, because it gets in the way of the relationship, and it gets, the idea being that their goal is to help improve upon anything that may be there. It's not just to provide, public health information, right? So that is a piece of it, but that's not the main goal. And it's all relationship based. So the other piece I would say is that often, and I'm not saying this is happening in your centers, but as I'm talking with nurses, yeah, you can ask them, Julie. It's not a federal requirement. It's something that can be paid for through CCDF, but it's not a requirement. Many states do pay for it with CCDF. We do not in Washington. Yeah, I am really sorry if I see that other people have said that they've also had similar experiences. And typically what I say when that's the case, and when childcare providers call me looking for a new nurse, and that has been their experience, is that I apologize. That means you really haven't had a nurse who's been trained in what childcare health consultations should look like, because it really should be a value add to your center. So,
we've had plenty, and I think that again, this goes program to program, but we're providing every single day. I'm going in, or my executive director is going in, looking at rashes, looking at feeding schedules. I mean, I think that we're all just so been in the field for so long. I'm not sitting here tooting my own horn, but it's like I can't think of anything that a nurse could add to my program. And I mean that respectfully. I think this is something I'd like to maybe see us work on, and maybe make it something that people can do, on a volunteer basis if they want to, but maybe, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud, because this is something, again, every time we lose a nurse consultant, it's just a freaking headache for us. And there's just no value that I see. And again, I see it time and time again in different spaces, people bringing up, I lost my nurse consultant. I don't know what to do. I can't, this is really expensive. This is a hassle, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'll shut up now. Thank you.
No, I appreciate your input, Dana. I really do. Lois, I saw you had your hand up.
Hey, Jennifer. Yes, I
Hello.
do, because I guess my experience is a little bit different. And I miss the days when King County, when we used to have someone from the Department of Health be able to visit with us, to be able to consult with Lenore Rubin, who I know you know, and people like that, when we had different issues and that type of thing. And now, that funding is gone and that has changed. I miss being able to have that. I know it's different when it's by request versus it being mandatory. You have to pay out of pocket and so on and so forth. But, when we talk about investing in our infrastructure, and even though we know what's happening at the federal level, I'm hoping that that's something that Washington State will do again, is invest in our early learning nurses, so that for those programs where, as Dana shared, where it might be cost prohibitive, and their current nurse is, for whatever reason, not being a value add, that they can be able to at least meet the standards and not have to pay. But, for myself, I'm having nurse envy right now. I wish we could have someone stop by to be able to help us with our program. My father always told us, and I know Julie is going to laugh at this, so you should learn something new every day. So that has always been the way that I view things. So even in having a conversation, there may be something that they bring up that I may not know that could enhance my program. So that's just my take. I wish that it was something that was more available, especially in King County. Thanks, Jennifer.
No problem. Thanks, Lois. I appreciate your input. So I'm going to pivot a little bit. And I would say that if you have more feedback about an experience that you have had or not had and you wish you had, please I will put my contact information in the box, and I am always available, as it is also on that child care health consultation page. I am the person to contact. So if you're having questions, concerns, problems, or you're looking for a new nurse, I am the place you go to do that. for right now, until I can come up with a better system. That's how it exists as of today. On that same page, there's also some information that was designed, and there was a question, I think, Julie, you may have said about the training. We did have childcare providers look at the training before it went up. So it is and has been vetted also through the childcare provider world. Obviously not all of them, but many of them did. So if you have input, I will take that as well, because it's never, nothing's ever finished. Okay, so I want to show you the registry from King County to start with. And to Lois's point, we used to have a lot more support. There are only 3 counties in the state now who have dollars through their budgets to support childcare health consultation. King County has a childcare health team that used to visit childcare providers across the county, but now are limited to just their deal programs, the Seattle preschool programs. And then there's the Best Starts for Kids program that visits family, friends, and neighbors, and some kinship care kind of situations, but not licensed care. So they have a team. They have put together a huge amount of resources that are a fantastic place. That's one of the places I first send any new child care health consultant, is to look at their resources, because their webpage is fantastic. It's linked on this same child care health consultation page, so I will put the link to that in the chat as well. But then Snohomish County also has 2.5 FTEs that they use to support I heard you guys talking about STARS hours earlier. They have a health page that is also linked on the child care health consultation page, and with a little link that says free training. I know health hours in the STARS world can be challenging to come by. Snohomish County offers free STARS hours in health classes that offer STARS hours. So I always send people there. Their information is vetted and supported. And then off and on, Island County also has staff members that are paid for with their mental health tax. So besides that, it's not something that's supported. So if somebody had asked in the chat about who pays for this, unfortunately, I mean, it's not, again, if I was sitting on my soapbox and I had, a magic wand to wave, every child care provider would have access to this when and how they want it, and it would be paid for. Unfortunately, that's not the system that we live in. It used to be paid for by the state Department of Health. And then as public health started moving away from offering, I'm sorry, I'm talking fast again. Austin's laughing at me. As they started moving away from offering direct services, all of that work went out to the local health departments. And then as the folks in those jobs started retiring, they just didn't fill the positions. So there was a good 10 years where this wasn't supported at all, other than by Seashell, which is a group of health and health people and nurses across the state who got together voluntarily to try and keep this going. So that's where I picked it up from. But at any rate, I want to show you the King County Registry, because they are the ones who have been able to start with what I would love to see. So let me share that, and then I'll move on to immunizations after that. I know this is only going to be applicable to folks who are in King County, but for those of you who are, this is a fantastic opportunity, and really what I would love to see us be able to create for the state. This is really what I'm doing on the back end. They have, let's see, we're going to East County. We want infant room nurse consultation. So it's going to give you a list of the few folks who are currently offering that service in that geographic area. The way that this happens now, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it is only applicable to those of you in King County. I just want to show that we are working. We're on our way to making something happen. But how this happens on the back end, I started to talk about this a little bit, is that when a childcare provider needs a nurse and they email me or they call me, I have a spreadsheet that is this like multi-tabbed, separated out spreadsheet that does basically what this is doing now. So if somebody calls me and says, I'm in Renton, then I can say, okay, I can find you a childcare provider, a childcare health consultant, who is currently serving infants who speak Spanish and is working in South King County. So that's happening in my head at this point, as opposed to on a computer program, but that's also very expensive, which is why we don't have one yet.
Hey, Jennifer, have you been able to get the link for that King County onto the DCYF page where you showed us?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it is linked on there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, fantastic.
Or,
thank you.
Yeah. Or if it's not, it's in the queue of things to be updated, because that happens all the time too. Yes. And again, it's not, I have, like, that showed 3 people. I have a list of about 40 on my King County list, because a lot of the folks have chosen to not necessarily go to that registry yet if they serve more than one county, because then they're having to be registered in multiple places, which is one of the kind of convoluted pieces with having there being 2 registries. But because King County Child Care Health Consultation is broader than infant consultation, there are a whole bunch more people in here that are serving other pieces than just the infant room piece that's required by WAC that I oversee. Okay. There are 197 nurses currently doing this work in the state that I have worked with. So, like, there is no county in our state that does not have service at this point in time, which is one of the things I often hear is that, well, there are no nurses. I have nurses working in every community. And if there's one that's lower, I will go do my due diligence to find people. So, okay, I'm going to move on to immunizations. Any further questions that you may have about child care health consultation, please, please, please reach out. I would love to chat with you about it. If you have ideas or suggestions, just knowing that there's no budget, it's just me. So, trying to be realistic about what I can do. Okay. So childcare health consultation to the side. Another piece that I work on is immunizations. So as of November of 2023, what year is this? Yes, November of 2023, we were able to change the law to allow childcare centers that don't have a nurse, or who don't have a nurse who helps them, because often childcare health consultants don't have anything to do with immunizations. That's not really part of their role. To have access to the immunization registry. And there is a specific process that's set out so that childcare providers can access that. And I want to show you what that looks like really briefly. Again, I will put all of these links in the chat as soon as I'm done so that you can include them in your notes. But there's the part of the immunization registry. So it's called, you'll sometimes hear it called the IIS, the Immunization Information System, or the WAIIS, the Washington Immunization Information System, or school module is the other name that you'll sometimes call it. And we're trying to get away from calling it school module to calling it school and childcare immunization module, because we're now serving childcare. When it was developed, it was just for the K-12 system. So in the past, there was only the option to do a full exchange, which meant you had to have a medical professional that signed off on it saying, I will let you have access to this system. In Pierce County in 2024, we ran, or before that, it was 2022, we ran a pilot to have centers be able to access it through the health department for numerous reasons. That was successful in some ways and failed in others. But what it did lead us to was the ability to create a limited exchange. So I don't know if you can see where my cursor is, but right here in the middle of the page, it says limited exchange for Head Start, ECAP, and child cares who do not employ or contract with a nurse. So it's a really simple process. You would click on the exchange and it'll take you to a form that you fill out and send directly through the computer system to the Department of Health to allow your child care center to have access to the registry. There is some training that's available on the DOH website, as well as I am happy to walk through that with your center if that's something that you're interested in. Yes, I know it was a long process, and it is only readability, because the only people who have access to edit the system are medical professionals. But for childcare providers who want to have access to be able to pull your CISs without having to feel like a bill collector, which is often what I felt like in a previous role, tracking down immunizations. This is a way to allow you to do that. A secondary amazing side effect for lack of a better way of putting it, and will become more and more important as things at our federal level have changed, and some of the beliefs in our system have changed a little bit. There is a requirement in WAC that every child care center report their immunizations to the Department of Health every fall. And it's typically in November. When I first took this role, 13% of centers were reporting. And within the couple years, we've gotten it up to about 27 to 28%. And so anybody who is utilizing the school module, it will automatically report for you, which means that you don't even have to think about it. And it should help just kind of de facto improve the amount of immunizations, centers that are reporting on their immunizations. That is also a piece that I'm happy to help you with if you get to the fall, or get to November and you're like, I heard that I'm supposed to do this and I don't know how, or I don't see where, that sort of thing. So,
Jennifer,
yeah,
can you put that website link in the chat for everyone?
I will put several links as soon as I'm done talking.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I can't do them both at the same time or I'll completely lose my train of thought. Yes, so the access is something that you can apply for. There's a little bit of an asterisk or a caveat to that right now, which is that in this latest round of state budget cuts, the immunizations office was halved, literally, in staff. And so there aren't enough staff in their office right now to actually process all of the applications. We have close to 500 childcare providers who have enrolled in the system at this point in time, which is pretty awesome considering it's been a really kind of soft, kind of slow rollout. We didn't want to just put out a notice to everybody. It has gone out in Gov delivery emails, but like we didn't want to say everybody do it because there isn't the capacity to support it, because there's like 2 people at their office and me to be able to support that. So if you put in your application, it will be put into the queue. And then in January, when they begin processing the applications again, then they'll start from whoever put in their first application. So even though they're not doing it today, I do recommend that if you don't have access and you're interested, please put in your application. Yeah, Jamie, thank you. It really is. It's a huge difference. So I will put the link to that in the chat. Does anyone have any questions about that? I see I'm getting close to my time, so I want to make sure I make sure I make use of everybody's time. Yes, I will put all of the information in there so that issue with students who provide immunization. Yeah, so yes, there are, okay, that's a great caveat. Thank you, Dee. If you are accessing immunizations and any of the children, so this became an issue in some of the places in Pierce County or in Kitsap, in a little bit in Spokane. If you are a place, or Clark County, if you're a place that regularly has children who were immunized either by the military or across state lines, those immunizations will not be in the registry, because they would be in the registries that belong to the federal government for the military or another state, if they're done across state lines. So if they establish a provider in Washington, those immunizations are entered in as historicals. So they will get put in eventually, but if you're talking about a new enrollment, that can be a bit of a challenge. And your point about certificates of exemption are also not entered into the system, and there's multiple reasons for that. But that's a great question, Mindy. It depends on how the tribal health center is funded. Many do. It's like 98% of pediatricians across the state do participate at this point. But I can neither confirm nor deny the percentage of the tribal health programs, although I have not heard many complaints or questions about it. So I'm assuming that most do. If you have an area that's not the case, I'm always happy to talk to the providers as well, meaning the medical provider. If there's a question about if they choose to participate or not, that's also helpful. How do you have a complete report in November? So when you go to report, if you're using school module, it will just kind of like automatically suck it out of the backside because you've already put the information into the system. So you won't have to do anything. If you are not, or you're only using the system to pull your certificates of immunization status out, then you have to report manually. And there is a link that doesn't exist yet, so I can't put it into the chat. But it will go out in one of the Gov Delivery emails that goes out to all the providers as it gets closer. That you click on and you tally up, how many of your kids have all of their measles, mumps, and rubella shots? How many of your kids have all of their hepatitis B shots? And then you report that, and it's just like one set of numbers. Like if you have 45 kids and you have 42 kids who are complete for that, and 41 kids who are complete for that, and it's not anything punitive. It's literally just so that we have an idea of what our facilities look like at this point in time. Sandra, you can typically file it as early as November 1st, unless they change something. And this year, because of all of the, I'm going to call it weirdness, with what's going on with immunization policy right now, I'm going to assume it's going to be November 1st, but it has been later in previous years. So, yeah, that's typically when, but I will make sure that it goes out in a Gov Delivery so that it's at least accessible for everyone. I've reached my time, so I apologize to both Austin and Humberto because I have spoken really fast, even though I tried to talk really slow. But yeah, I also oversee the lead program, and I was going to talk about that, but I ran out of time. So if you are needing to have your lead or copper levels in your water tested, I'm also the person that you can look to. There's a free program through the Department of Health to make that happen. And then they also have a little bit of money for remediation. So I will put my contact information, the links to all of the things that I talked about in the chat so it can go in the notes. And I am really very serious about, I am here to be a resource. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Thank you. And thanks so much for starting early. That was great that you were available.
Yeah, well, it gave me extra time, so I'll take it.
Good information. And yeah, thanks for providing links and your contact information. I think we'll take you up on it.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Okay, so it's time for that mentee again. So you can provide feedback or comments on everything she presented about, immunizations and nurse consultants. And if you have ideas, you can drop it in the Menti, you can drop it in the chat, either one. Our next meeting will be November 19th, followed by a joint meeting in December with ELAC. I think that's the plan right now. So anyway, we're really done. If you have thoughts, though, this is the time to put them in there somewhere in the chat, or like I said, if it's on this topic, you can use the Menti. And what did you put there, Jessica? Register here. What do we got?
We're doing registration for the next meeting.
Oh, good idea. Okay, so if you're on the meeting, get yourself registered for the next meeting.
Julie, I see that Lois has her hand up.
Oh, dang, I missed it. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Marlene. Julie, I have a question. If Jennifer has capacity, since we're supposed to go until 1 anyway, would it be okay for her to share out about the lead piece if she has time?
If she has time, sure.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to talk about it. There is, thanks, Lois, a program that was funded by the EPA, and it allows us to offer free water testing for all of the fixtures that are in your center, because as you are probably all aware, the WAC requires that there's periodic testing of lead and copper levels. We still have money in the budget as of this point, so I am encouraging folks who who are in their general vicinity of maybe needing it to take advantage of it. We have had a really, really strong outpouring of desire from childcare. I was trying to think of a better way of saying that, but of childcare providers looking for the testing, and I really do encourage us to make sure we use it. I will put the link to their page as well. I can also connect you to it, but I'll put the link to the program so that it's in the chat. What happens is, because it's a free program, the information comes, if a center tests positive, what we've been able to do to be able to kind of work with some of the WAC requirements is that, yeah, it's not only that, it's not in our budget. So it's it came out of the EPA budget, and it was a grant. So as long as we have money and it hasn't been rescinded by the federal government, we will continue to use it. And yeah, we've had several hundred childcare providers who have made use of this already, probably close to 1,000, I think, at this point. We've had about 75 centers that have tested positive on their first go round. Only 3 or 4 that actually had to have any sort of remediation done, and then the health department was able to help them either get the fixtures replaced or take something out of commission if that's what needed to happen. What I will say is that there is I would say that lead is something that we hear about a lot, especially since what happened in Flint happened. In the area that we live in, our concerns for lead toxicity, lead poisoning in water actually comes, like, I'm going to make up a percentage, but it's probably not far off. About 90% of our concerns come from fixtures, so meaning like the faucet, not any sort of systemic issues that are coming, from water systems or pipes in the walls or anything like that. It's really, thus far, I can say out of the 75, everyone but one was a fixture issue. And even the one, it ended up being a weird kind of one-off thing that was not expected. So what happens when they test positive? If a center tests positive, it all goes back and forth between the Department of Health and the center, and I don't need to get involved. Nobody at DCYF needs to get involved unless it tests positive, in which case then the information comes to me and I will alert your licensor. Yeah, I know. I will alert the licensor that there's a process happening, and what we're doing to kind of work with some of the WAC requirements is that the Department of Health works directly with you to say, okay, this is what we need to do to get away from it. Because if what happens, and this is what we've seen, the vast majority, when I said that we had 75 test positive, but only a handful that actually needed support, because post-COVID, so many classrooms got shut down or space began to be used a little bit differently in so many of our centers that there often are spaces that are being utilized differently. And so when the fixtures were being tested, most often that water hadn't been flushed appropriately. So it has just been like sitting in the pipes, for weeks, months, years in some cases. And so then when that water comes out, anything that's in the water, in the pipes, in the fixtures is coming out and testing not false positive, because it is there, but it's also not something that would be of concern, because once the water runs, then it does not test positive anymore. So, which is one of the reasons why, especially if you live in an older house or your facility is an older facility, that you should never put your cup under the faucet and turn it on, because that's when things are coming out of the faucet. So the water should run. Then you put your cup, your cup in, if for drinking, for example, or if you're filling up a pot for water. And we, so in everyone, but like I said, 4 or 5 of those cases, when they retested, they came back well within the regulation, the applicable amounts. So what's interesting, and I just wanted to address your comment there, Julie, about it being the faucets being the least likely. The reason, and this is one of those signs of, the way that our world and things are created and made these days, is that most of our fixtures are being made in I'm going to say a cheaper way. They're being made in a way that is not necessarily like, if it looks silver doesn't mean it is silver, right? And so both the metals themselves, often, especially if they've come from someplace else where they don't have the same regulatory oversight that we have here, then when they're being installed, they did a test of something like you know, all of the fixtures that were coming out of Home Depot, for example, and like 90% of them tested, you know, it's one of those things where it's just, it is what it is. It's what we can do then is what are the steps that we can take to mitigate that so that we are not causing harm to either the children in our care or the staff in our care, right? And so yes, the program's available. Please make use of it. Lois, was there anything else specific that you wanted to know about that, or just more about it? I could go on because this is another issue, of course, that you know.
No, I've used it before, but I just thought since we had a little bit of time, it might be good to just share out.
Yeah.
But I'd be curious to see if you guys ever make, sorry, I'm on two places at the same time, to see if you guys ever make recommendations of brands that you find, fixtures that you have the least amount of issues with, like maybe American Standard or Moen, but
Yeah.
that would be helpful as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I wish I could say that we could do that. But what I will tell you is we would have the same problems that we had when we were trying to look at what cleansers or sanitizers are acceptable. We can't say like any brand names of anything because then it would be like saying Washington supports, you know, Moen fixtures or whatever, you know, or Clorox bleach or whatever the case may be. So we often, like for cleansers and bleaches, there's a relatively updated kind of thing, and we're working on trying to come up with a list of like these are the 30 most common, you know, cleansers that we utilize that we know have passed through licensing standards or whatever, you know. But we have to be really careful, and a lot of times we have to say things like they have these 5, and the reason I say this, I know it's a little bit different, but it's the same concept, right? You know, they have these same 5 active ingredients, you know what I mean, versus like these 5 brand names. And it feels disingenuous. I acknowledge that, but it's also kind of the way that as a government entity, we have to be aware and cautious of how we present things. So that being said, if you are talking with the Department of Health remediation team, they will send a plumber to you if you don't have one that you regularly work with. Like I know the kinder care, you know, facilities have a plumber that generally works with them already, but they might be able to give you that advice because they would be able to say, and in the times that I've had to replace the fixtures, this is the brand they've used, but I couldn't actually do that, unfortunately. So yeah.
It sounds like old school brands are better, like older, like just, I don't know.
Yeah, my experience has been that it has more to do with how it's manufactured than the brand name or the cost or even where it's manufactured. It, yeah, that has been the number one by far place that we have seen it. So it's when you get your test done, then you will see, I guess, you know, whether it's through this program or on your own. Either way is fine. There's obviously no requirement to utilize the program. It's just an opportunity that's available.
Yeah, this is great information. And I want to just apologize. When you said you have to run or you said your time's up, I assumed you had to run. I didn't realize. Okay.
No, you had just said I had till 12:30. So I was like, okay, I'm done. Trying to be good on being on time.
Yeah, I think the agenda probably said that, but we did end early with Matt, so that was useful.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Since I've got an audience and other random topics. Because there's always something. Yeah, so the other piece I would put out there is the place that I sit in my role is really as a consultant to the agency. I am an employee, but like my job is to be a public health consultant to both the contractors, which would be all of you all, you know, childcare providers, as well as to internal staff. And so like the meeting I'm going to directly after this is to work with the health consultants that work in the Head Start NECAP sites. So I want to put out there that I brought a grab bag of things that I work with to talk with you all. That's just a little piece of what I do. So if there are random weird health things that come up, or you have families that have questions, problems, I don't like say send your families my way. That's not what I'm encouraging, although sometimes you have that where it just is the thing. And my email is available for that. There's a link on the page, and I do my best to get back to people as quickly as I can. I imagine that in the next couple months, as we are hearing more and more things in the news about immunizations and vaccines and the recommendations, the Western Vaccine Council put out their recommendations today. So those will be the things that the Department of Health in Washington will be following. But we're kind of living in a different world now. We've always looked to the CDC for our requirements, and that will no longer be the case in the state of Washington. So if you have questions, and I would say not necessarily sending parents my way, but if you have questions with parents and you want to contact me, I am happy to work through like CISs if you have questions about them, or some of the philosophical questions. I get a lot of those, about what does this count as an exemption, or what should this look like, that sort of thing. So I just want to put out there that that's the role I play for all of you, and I'm happy to continue to do that. So I'm not going to put myself out there any more than that, because that's probably plenty, but please just remember that I'm here as a resource for all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I will put those other links in the chat and then let you finish up your meeting then. Oh, that's a great question. I keep saying I'm done, and then we have one more. Lois's question about how it's going to intersect with insurance coverage. So right now, nothing. It will continue to look the same way it did last year. Moving forward, we don't know. I wish I could say that insurance companies will do the right thing and follow the guidelines that states have put out for themselves. And I think in some cases that will be the case. In other cases, I think it won't. So that remains to be seen. But as of right now, like the new COVID boosters are out, the new flu boosters are out. Both of them are readily available and covered by insurance. I can't 100% say that. Check with your insurance, but like the expectation is that they are both covered by insurance and available if those are things that you choose to participate in. And it's shaping up to be a nasty COVID and flu season. So if that is something that you do to protect yourselves, then I recommend it. I have done so and made my children do so. So that's the only advice I can put out there. Yeah, I wish I could give you a really good answer, Lois, but does using the school module mean getting CIS under school reports, or is it more? No. So it's more. It's essentially a roster. And yes, as far as the reporting part is concerned, if you're utilizing the school module, there is a roster that you've created of your students in the system, as opposed to just pulling the CISs out. And when you do that, it allows you to pull any reports. Like, for example, if we know at this point, based off of last year's school entrance immunization rates, that we are now below 90% in our vaccination rates, and in some counties much lower. So we fully expect to begin seeing some of these vaccine preventable diseases break through in some areas. So if that were to happen, what would be expected of you as a director by the medical director of your county would be for you to be able to readily pull out and say, these are the children who are not vaccine protected. And creating a roster in the school module would allow you to pull a report that says, these are all of my kids who are not up to date, or these are all of my kids who are up to date, whichever way you pull the report. That using that piece is what allows you to not have to do the state reporting, because essentially what you're doing is creating that state report that's just ongoing, right? If you're just pulling the IISs, which is where most people dip their toe right into the system, and that's great, and it's the first step, and I applaud anybody who goes there. You are not, in fact, using the school module, so you would still then have to report on your immunization status. Yeah, thanks for asking. That's a great question. I was not clear on that when I talked earlier. So yes, and that's how I used it as well, Janelle, when I was working for Head Start NECAP, was every kid who had enrolled, that was what we pulled. Was all their immunizations. So, okay. While you all think about whether there's any more questions, I'm going to put the lead information in the chat, and
Now's the time, guys. Any other questions for Jennifer? And then Jessica put the Menti in again. So if you have comments that you want to put there. Okay, feels like we are ready to wrap up. Oh yeah, grab those links from Jennifer before we end the meeting. She just put the one in for the free lead testing. So I think we're coming to a close though. We've got our next meeting. Jessica did put a link in there to register for it, which is really useful. I'm guessing that way the CE team could probably even send you a reminder. I'm not sure, but that would be pretty neat. So anyway, I think that is it. Yep. We are good to go. Just remember to come on the 19th. And everybody that came, we want to thank the presenters. We had a lot of DCYF presenters today. And on the interpreters, it was all pretty flawless, I feel like. So this was a good meeting for that. Thank you. And thanks to the presenters for showing up and slowing down. It was good. Thank you very much, guys. You did great, Jennifer. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.